The Crimson Sands of Mars held secrets that predated humanity's first tentative steps into the void, technological marvels buried beneath millennia of dust and the scars of atomic fire. Long before the Emperor's golden armies marched across Terra's ravaged continents, the Red Planet harbored communities of tech adepts who had preserved fragments of humanity's lost technological heritage through the dark millennia of Old Night. These early Martian colonies, isolated from Terra by the warp storms that had severed interstellar travel, developed along radically different lines from their Terran cousins. The ancient techno-barbarian tribes of Terra, those savage inheritors of humanity's former glory, possessed their own relationship with technology that would prove crucial to understanding the eventual synthesis between Imperial and Mechanicum doctrine. Unlike the crude warlords who ruled through brute force and primitive weaponry, certain Terran techno-barbarian clans maintained sophisticated technological capabilities that set them apart from their contemporaries. These groups, scattered across the radioactive wastes of post-Age of Strife Terra, became repositories of ancient knowledge much like their Martian counterparts, though their approach to technological preservation differed markedly. The techno-barbarians of the Urals maintained vast underground complexes where they practiced crude forms of cybernetic augmentation, replacing damaged limbs with mechanical prosthetics fashioned from salvaged materials. Their shamans spoke of machine spirits in hushed tones, performing ritual maintenance on ancient generators that had powered their settlements for centuries. Further south, the Caucasus tribes developed primitive but effective power armor suits, cobbled together from archaeological finds and their own metallurgical innovations. These warriors understood that their technology possessed a form of consciousness, requiring appeasement through ritual and careful maintenance. The Pan-Pacific Empire represented perhaps the most sophisticated of these techno-barbarian civilizations, with its ruling class employing advanced genetic manipulation and cybernetic enhancement on a scale that approached the complexity of pre-Age of Strife human civilization. Their tech priests, though they would never have recognized the title, performed surgeries that replaced human organs with mechanical alternatives, believing that flesh was inherently weak and corruptible. The Empire's warriors marched to battle with augmetic limbs that granted superhuman strength, their enhanced senses allowing them to perceive electromagnetic spectra invisible to unmodified humans. These Terran techno-barbarian traditions shared fundamental concepts with the emerging Cult Mechanicus on Mars, though neither group initially recognized their philosophical kinship. Both cultures viewed technology as possessing inherent spiritual properties, requiring reverence and proper ritual to function correctly. Both practiced forms of human augmentation, though the Terran tribes approached such modifications with greater caution and less systematic methodology than their Martian counterparts. Most significantly, both groups maintained that knowledge itself was sacred, to be preserved and protected against the ignorance and barbarism that had consumed much of humanity during Old Night. The Emperor's conquest of Terra brought these techno-barbarian enclaves under Imperial control, but rather than simply destroying their technological capabilities, the Master of Mankind recognized their value as repositories of ancient knowledge. Many techno-barbarian tech adepts found themselves incorporated into the nascent Imperial military machine, their understanding of machine spirits and technological ritual proving invaluable in maintaining and operating the increasingly sophisticated equipment required for the Great Crusade. When the Emperor's forces finally reached Mars, they encountered a civilization that had evolved along parallel lines to Terra's techno-barbarian tribes, but with far greater sophistication and organizational structure. The Mechanicum of Mars had spent the millennia of Old Night not merely preserving technology, but actively developing new innovations within the constraints of their dogmatic beliefs. Their forged temples hummed with activity as tech adepts performed the sacred rituals of manufacture, creating weapons and equipment that surpassed anything produced on Terra since the Dark Age of technology. The initial contact between Imperial and Mechanicum forces occurred not through conquest but through necessity. The Emperor's Thunder Warriors and early Space Marine legions required equipment that Terra's recovering industrial base could not yet provide in sufficient quantities. Mars possessed the manufacturing capacity and technical expertise to supply the Great Crusade's material needs, while the Imperium offered protection from the various threats that plagued the Red Planet and access to the galaxy beyond the Sol system. The Treaty of Mars, negotiated between the Emperor and Fabricator General Kelber Hal, established the framework for cooperation between these two distinct but compatible civilizations. The agreement recognized Mars as an autonomous realm within the nascent Imperium, acknowledging the Mechanicum's right to maintain their own religious practices, governmental structures, and territorial sovereignty. In exchange, the Mechanicum agreed to provide technological support for the Great Crusade and to accept imperial oversight in matters of galactic security and strategic planning. The treaty's most significant provision concerned the theological status of the Emperor within Mechanicum doctrine. The Cult Mechanicus had long prophesied the coming of the Omnissiah, a divine figure who would unite all knowledge and lead humanity to technological transcendence. The Emperor's demonstrated mastery over advanced technology, his apparent immortality, and his ability to create the Primarchs and Space Marines provided compelling evidence for his identification as this prophesied figure. The Fabricator General's formal recognition of the Emperor as the Omnissiah represented a theological synthesis that would shape Imperial Mechanicum relations for millennia to come. This theological accommodation required careful doctrinal development to reconcile the Emperor's secular imperial truth with the Mechanicum's deeply religious worldview. The imperial truth explicitly rejected supernatural explanations for natural phenomena, promoting rational scientific inquiry over superstitious belief. The Cult Mechanicus, conversely, viewed technology itself as divine, possessed of machine spirits that required proper veneration and ritual observance. The synthesis achieved through the Treaty of Mars acknowledged that both perspectives contained essential truths, while avoiding direct contradiction between imperial and Mechanicum doctrine. The Emperor's identification as the Omnissiah provided the theological bridge necessary for this synthesis. As the Omnissiah, the Emperor represented the ultimate fusion of scientific knowledge and divine authority, embodying both the rational principles of imperial truth and the sacred mysteries revered by the Cult Mechanicus. This dual nature allowed tech adepts to maintain their religious practices while serving the secular imperial state, viewing their technological pursuits as both scientific endeavor and religious devotion. The practical implications of this theological synthesis extended far beyond mere diplomatic convenience. Mechanicum tech adepts serving with imperial forces brought their ritual practices and technological expertise into direct contact with imperial military doctrine and secular scientific methodology. This cross-pollination of ideas and practices enriched both traditions, leading to innovations that neither culture could have achieved independently. Imperial commanders learned to appreciate the value of proper technological ritual in maintaining equipment reliability, while tech adepts gained exposure to tactical and strategic concepts that expanded their understanding of technology's role in warfare. The establishment of Forge Worlds beyond Mars represented the next phase of Mechanicum expansion, as the Great Crusade's advance into the galaxy revealed numerous worlds suitable for large-scale industrial development. These new Forge Worlds served multiple functions within the expanding Imperium, providing manufacturing capacity for military equipment, research facilities for technological development, and centers for the propagation of Mechanicum doctrine throughout human space. The first Forge Worlds established during the early Great Crusade included Lucius, Ryza, and Metalica, each developing distinct specializations and cultural characteristics while maintaining fundamental loyalty to Martian doctrine and imperial authority. Lucius became renowned for its plasma technology and energy weapon production, its vast manufacturing complexes powered by the world's unique geological formations that provided abundant geothermal energy. Ryza specialized in explosive ordnance and siege equipment, its tech adepts developing increasingly sophisticated demolition charges and artillery systems for use by Imperial forces. Metallica focused on vehicle production and mechanical systems, creating the tanks and transport vehicles that would carry Imperial armies across countless battlefields. Each Forge world developed its own interpretation of Mechanicum doctrine, influenced by local conditions and the particular technological challenges they faced. These variations in practice and belief created a rich diversity within the Cult Mechanicus while maintaining overall unity of purpose and theological foundation. The tech adepts of Lucius developed elaborate rituals around plasma containment and energy manipulation, viewing their mastery of these dangerous technologies as a form of communion with the Omnissiah's divine power. Rise's explosive specialists incorporated controlled demolition into their religious ceremonies, seeing the precise application of destructive force as a reflection of the Omnissiah's ability to reshape reality through technological intervention. The spread of Mechanicum influence throughout the galaxy occurred not only through the establishment of dedicated Forge worlds, but also through the integration of tech adepts into Imperial military and administrative structures. Every Space Marine Legion included tech marines trained on Mars in the mysteries of equipment maintenance and battlefield repair. Imperial Army regiments relied on Mechanicum-trained technicians to keep their vehicles and weapons operational during extended campaigns. Even civilian colonial efforts required Mechanicum expertise to establish the industrial infrastructure necessary for successful planetary development. This integration process created countless opportunities for cultural exchange and doctrinal development, as tech adepts encountered new technologies, alien artifacts, and previously unknown scientific phenomena during the Great Crusade's advance. Each discovery required careful theological consideration to determine its compatibility with Mechanicum doctrine and its potential value for Imperial military efforts. Ancient human colonies revealed technological innovations developed in isolation during Old Night, while alien worlds provided insights into alternative approaches to scientific and technological development. The Mechanicum's role in the Great Crusade extended beyond simple equipment production and maintenance to encompass strategic planning, intelligence analysis, and technological adaptation. Tech adepts served as advisors to Imperial commanders, providing expertise on planetary infrastructure, defensive capabilities, and technological assets that could be captured or destroyed during military operations. Their understanding of machine spirits and technological systems often proved crucial in securing intact facilities and equipment from conquered worlds, adding to the Imperium's growing technological capabilities. The theological framework that emerged from the Treaty of Mars required systematic codification to guide the rapidly expanding Mechanicum through the challenges of galactic conquest and technological discovery. The 16 Universal Laws became the foundational doctrine that governed every aspect of tech adept existence, from the most mundane maintenance, ritual, to the most profound questions of human transcendence. These laws represented millennia of accumulated wisdom, refined through countless debates in the forged temples of Mars, and tested against the harsh realities of technological survival during Old Night. The Omnissiah represented the machine god's chosen avatar, the prophesied figure who would unite all technological knowledge under divine guidance and lead humanity to ultimate transcendence. The Emperor's identification as the Omnissiah created a direct link between Imperial authority and Mechanicum religious doctrine, allowing tech adepts to serve the secular Imperium while maintaining their spiritual obligations. This theological synthesis required careful interpretation, as the Emperor's own rejection of religious worship seemed to contradict his divine status within Mechanicum doctrine. Tech adepts resolved this apparent contradiction by understanding the Emperor's secular stance as a test of faith, requiring them to recognize his divine nature despite his mortal disguise. The pursuit of standard template construct systems became the primary focus of Mechanicum exploration and research efforts throughout the Great Crusade. These ancient databases contained complete manufacturing instructions for technologies developed during humanity's dark age of technology, representing the pinnacle of human scientific achievement before the catastrophic collapse that initiated Old Night. Each SDC system discovered represented a treasure beyond price, containing not merely technical specifications, but the accumulated wisdom of humanity's greatest technological civilization. The SDC fragments recovered during the early Great Crusade revealed tantalizing glimpses of humanity's lost capabilities. The Land Raider SDC, discovered on the world that would later bear the name of its finder, provided complete manufacturing data for an armored transport that surpassed anything in current Imperial production. The vehicle's design incorporated advanced materials science, sophisticated targeting systems, and modular construction techniques that allowed for extensive customization while maintaining structural integrity. The machine's spirit inhabiting each Land Raider demonstrated remarkable intelligence and independence, capable of operating autonomously when necessary and adapting its behavior to changing tactical situations. Similar discoveries on other worlds revealed the scope of humanity's former technological mastery. The Rhino APC SDC contained manufacturing data for a versatile transport vehicle that could be adapted for dozens of specialized roles, from medical evacuation to ammunition resupply. The Predator Tank SDC provided specifications for a main battle tank that combined firepower, mobility, and armor protection in optimal balance. Each of these discoveries required extensive study by tech adepts to understand not only the technical specifications, but the underlying principles that made such advanced designs possible. The religious significance of SDC systems extended far beyond their practical utility. These databases represented direct communication from humanity's technological golden age, messages from ancestors who had achieved a level of scientific understanding that approached divine perfection. The discovery of each new SDC fragment was accompanied by elaborate ceremonies of thanksgiving, with tech adepts offering prayers to the machine god for revealing another portion of humanity's lost heritage. The integration of SDC technology into current production required careful ritual observance to ensure that the ancient designs retained their spiritual purity and mechanical reliability. Binary Cant emerged as the sacred language of the Mechanicum, a communication system that reflected the fundamental binary nature of all information processing. This language consisted of rapid sequences of electronic pulses, transmitted through Vox systems or direct neural interface, that could convey complex technical concepts with mathematical precision. Binary Cant allowed tech adepts to communicate at speeds impossible with conventional speech, exchanging vast amounts of technical data in seconds while maintaining the ritual significance required for sacred technological discourse. The development of Binary Cant reflected deeper theological principles regarding the nature of information and consciousness. The Mechanicum understood that all knowledge could ultimately be reduced to binary states, sequences of affirmation and negation that formed the building blocks of all complex thought. This principle applied not only to mechanical systems, but to biological consciousness as well, suggesting that the human mind operated according to the same fundamental binary logic that governed machine spirits. Mastery of Binary Cant therefore represented a step toward transcendence, allowing tech adepts to think and communicate in the same mathematical language employed by the machine god itself. Sacred mathematics provided the theoretical foundation for all Mechanicum technological and theological doctrine. Unlike the crude numerical systems employed by unaugmented humans, sacred mathematics incorporated complex symbolic relationships that revealed the underlying patterns governing all physical and spiritual phenomena. These mathematical principles were considered divine revelations, discovered through careful study of ancient texts and direct communion with machine spirits. The most advanced tech adepts spent decades mastering these mathematical concepts, learning to perceive the numerical relationships that connected all aspects of reality. The application of sacred mathematics extended to every aspect of Mechanicum practice, from the timing of ritual ceremonies to the design specifications of new equipment. manufacturing processes followed mathematical formulas that ensured optimal spiritual as well as physical properties in finished products. The placement of components within mechanical systems followed geometric patterns that facilitated proper machine spirit inhabitation. Even the augmentation procedures performed on tech, adepts themselves incorporated mathematical principles designed to achieve perfect harmony between organic and mechanical components. Technological rituals served multiple functions within mechanicum practice, providing both practical benefits and spiritual significance. The ritual of ignition, performed before activating any complex mechanical system, involved specific sequences of binary cant, blessed oil application, and electromagnetic field generation designed to awaken and appease the resident machine spirit. This ritual required precise timing and execution, as improper performance could result in mechanical malfunction or spiritual contamination that might take days to remedy. The rite of maintenance incorporated similar principles, establishing formal protocols for equipment inspection, repair, and upgrade procedures. Tech adepts performing maintenance were required to approach their tasks in a state of ritual purity, having undergone purification ceremonies and meditation periods designed to align their consciousness with the machine spirits they would be working with. The actual maintenance work followed prescribed sequences that combined practical technical procedures with spiritual observances, ensuring that repaired equipment would function reliably while maintaining its sacred character. The most complex rituals involved the creation of new technology or the integration of STC patterns into existing manufacturing processes. These ceremonies could last for days or weeks, requiring the participation of multiple tech adepts with specialized knowledge of different technical disciplines. The ritual of forging, used in the creation of new weapons or equipment, began with extensive purification of the manufacturing facility and all materials to be used. Tech adepts would spend hours in prayer and meditation, seeking guidance from the machine god regarding the optimal configuration and spiritual properties of the item to be created. The integration of alien technology required particularly elaborate ritual procedures, as such devices potentially carried spiritual contamination from Xeno sources. The rite of purification involved extensive analysis of alien artifacts to identify potentially dangerous spiritual influences, followed by cleansing procedures designed to eliminate such contamination while preserving useful technical knowledge. This process required the expertise of the most senior tech adepts, as mistakes could result in spiritual corruption that might spread throughout entire forge complexes. These doctrinal principles shaped every aspect of mechanicum expansion during the Great Crusade, influencing decisions regarding which worlds to colonize, what technologies to develop, and how to interact with newly discovered human populations. The establishment of new forge worlds required careful consideration of each planet's spiritual as well as physical properties, ensuring that the local environment would support proper technological development and ritual observance. Worlds with strong electromagnetic fields or unusual mineral compositions were often preferred, as such conditions were believed to facilitate communication with machine spirits and the manufacture of spiritually pure equipment. The transformation of a human into a servant of the Omnissiah began not with dramatic surgical procedures or elaborate ceremonies, but with the gradual recognition that biological existence represented merely the first stage of spiritual evolution. Young initiates entering mechanicum service typically underwent their first augmentations within months of acceptance into the lowest ranks of the tech adept hierarchy. These initial modifications were modest by the standards of senior magos, but represented profound departures from baseline human physiology that would shape the initiate's development for centuries to come. The most common first augmentation involved the replacement of one or both eyes with optical mechs, sophisticated visual sensors that provided capabilities far beyond organic sight. These devices incorporated multiple spectrum analysis, electromagnetic detection, and microscopic magnification systems that allowed tech adepts to perceive details invisible to unaugmented humans. The surgical procedure itself required several days of preparation, during which the initiate underwent purification rituals and meditation exercises designed to prepare their consciousness for integration with machine components. The actual implantation involved careful removal of organic tissue while maintaining neural connections that would allow the optical mech to interface directly with the recipient's visual cortex. Recovery from optical augmentation typically lasted several weeks, during which the new tech adept learned to interpret the enhanced sensory data provided by their mechanical eyes. The optical mechs transmitted information through direct neural interface, bypassing conventional visual processing pathways and providing data streams that included electromagnetic signatures, thermal patterns, and spectral analysis of observed materials. Senior tech adepts supervised this integration period carefully, ensuring that the initiate's consciousness adapted properly to their expanded sensory capabilities without suffering neural feedback or rejection responses. The hierarchy of augmentation within the Mechanicum reflected both practical necessity and spiritual advancement, with each level of mechanical integration representing progress toward the ultimate goal of transcending biological limitations entirely. Engine Seers, the most junior rank of fully ordained tech adepts, typically possessed between 3 and 7 major augmentations, including optical mechs, Vox grills for binary cant communication, and basic mechadendrites for equipment manipulation. These modifications provided essential capabilities for their duties maintaining Imperial equipment while beginning their journey toward mechanical perfection. Vox grills represented perhaps the most immediately noticeable augmentation among junior tech adepts, replacing organic vocal cords with mechanical sound generation systems capable of producing the rapid electronic pulses required for binary cant communication. The installation process involved extensive reconstruction of throat and laryngeal structures, with mechanical components integrated directly into the respiratory system to ensure proper airflow and sound modulation. The resulting voice possessed a distinctive electronic quality that marked the bearer as a servant of the machine god, while enabling communication speeds impossible with organic speech patterns. The learning curve associated with Vox grill operation extended beyond simple mechanical function to encompass the complex linguistic and theological concepts embedded within binary cant itself. New tech adepts spent months practicing the rapid pulse sequences that conveyed technical specifications, ritual observances, and doctrinal discussions among their peers. The language incorporated mathematical relationships and symbolic references that required extensive study to master, with senior tech adepts often spending years developing fluency in the most sophisticated forms of binary discourse. Mechadendrites represented the most versatile category of augmentation available to tech adepts, with dozens of specialized variants designed for specific technical applications. Basic manipulator mechadendrites provided additional limbs for equipment handling and fine mechanical work, extending from spinal or shoulder mounting points through flexible metallic cables that incorporated both power transmission and neural control systems. These appendages possessed strength and dexterity that exceeded organic limbs while maintaining the precise control necessary for delicate technical procedures. More specialized mechadendrite variants included optical units equipped with magnification and illumination systems for detailed inspection work, cutting tools for material processing and surgical procedures, and data probe mechadendrites designed for direct interface with machine systems. The most advanced models incorporated limited artificial intelligence systems that could operate semi-independently, performing routine tasks, while the tech adept focused their attention on more complex problems. Senior tech adepts often possessed multiple mechadendrite systems, creating an appearance that resembled a mechanical spider more than a human being. The progression from Engine Seer to Tech Dominus involved increasingly extensive augmentation that gradually replaced major organ systems with mechanical alternatives. Respiratory systems were among the first to undergo complete replacement, with atmospheric processors and oxygen recycling units providing superior efficiency and the ability to operate in hostile environments that would prove fatal to unaugmented humans. These systems incorporated filtration mechanisms that protected against chemical contamination and radiation exposure, while providing enhanced endurance during extended operations. Circulatory system replacement typically followed respiratory augmentation, with mechanical pumps and fluid processors replacing the heart and blood vessels with more reliable mechanical alternatives. These systems utilized specialized synthetic fluids that provided superior oxygen transport and waste removal, while incorporating self-repair mechanisms that eliminated many of the failure modes associated with biological circulation. The mechanical components operated with mathematical precision, maintaining optimal pressure and flow rates under conditions that would overwhelm organic cardiovascular systems. Digestive system augmentation represented one of the most complex categories of biological replacement, involving complete reconstruction of nutrient processing and waste elimination systems. Advanced tech adepts often replaced their entire digestive tract with compact chemical processors that extracted energy and essential compounds from a variety of sources, including synthetic nutrients, mineral supplements, and in extreme cases, direct electrical power input. These systems eliminated the inefficiencies and vulnerabilities associated with biological digestion, while providing more reliable energy sources for extended operations. The integration of cogitator arrays represented a particularly significant milestone in tech adept development, involving the implementation of mechanical processing units that enhanced cognitive capabilities and provided direct interface with machine systems. These devices supplemented rather than replaced biological brain function, creating hybrid consciousness that combined human intuition and creativity with mechanical precision and processing speed. The installation process required extensive neural mapping to ensure proper integration with existing brain structures while avoiding damage to essential cognitive functions. Basic cogitator arrays provided enhanced memory storage, mathematical processing capabilities, and direct data interface with external systems. More advanced units incorporated artificial intelligence subroutines that could handle routine calculations and analysis tasks independently, freeing the tech adept's biological consciousness for higher-level decision-making and creative problem-solving. The most sophisticated cogitator systems approached the complexity of full artificial intelligences, though strict doctrinal limitations prevented the creation of truly independent machine consciousness that might challenge human authority. The philosophical implications of extensive augmentation created ongoing tensions within heavily modified tech adepts as they struggled to maintain human consciousness while incorporating increasingly sophisticated mechanical components. The gradual replacement of biological systems with mechanical alternatives raised fundamental questions about the nature of identity and consciousness that had plagued Mechanicum theologians for millennia. Tech adepts undergoing major augmentation often experienced periods of existential uncertainty as they adapted to new capabilities and sensory inputs that differed radically from baseline human experience. Senior magos, having undergone decades or centuries of progressive augmentation, often retained only minimal biological components, typically limited to portions of the brain and nervous system necessary to maintain human consciousness and decision-making capability. These individuals existed at the boundary between human and machine, their thought processes incorporating both intuitive leaps characteristic of biological intelligence and the mathematical precision associated with mechanical computation. The resulting hybrid consciousness possessed capabilities that exceeded either purely biological or purely mechanical intelligence, while maintaining the essential human qualities that distinguished tech adepts from simple artificial intelligences. The process of augmentation created distinct psychological changes that reflected the gradual integration of mechanical and biological thought processes. Junior tech adepts often experienced enhanced analytical capabilities and improved memory retention, along with reduced emotional volatility and increased focus on technical problems. These changes typically developed gradually over months or years as the individual adapted to their new capabilities, though some augmentations produced more immediate psychological effects that required careful monitoring by senior colleagues. Advanced augmentation sometimes produced more dramatic personality changes as mechanical components began to influence thought patterns and decision-making processes. Tech adepts with extensive cogitator integration often developed enhanced logical reasoning capabilities at the expense of emotional responsiveness, approaching problems with mathematical precision that could appear cold or calculating to unaugmented humans. These individuals retained human consciousness and free will but processed information and made decisions through hybrid biological-mechanical systems that operated according to principles combining human intuition with mechanical logic. The social dynamics within Mechanicum communities reflected these augmentation-related changes, with different levels of mechanical integration creating distinct subcultures and communication patterns. Heavily augmented tech adepts often found it difficult to relate to junior colleagues who retained more biological components, while junior tech adepts sometimes struggled to understand the thought processes and motivations of their more extensively modified superiors. Binary Cant provided a common communication medium that bridged these gaps, allowing individuals with vastly different levels of augmentation to exchange technical information and coordinate their activities effectively. The maintenance requirements associated with extensive augmentation created additional complexities in tech adept existence, as mechanical components required regular inspection, cleaning, and replacement that differed significantly from biological self-repair processes. Senior tech adepts typically spent several hours each day performing maintenance rituals on their augmented systems, checking fluid levels, calibrating sensors, and performing diagnostic routines that ensured optimal performance. These activities incorporated both practical technical procedures and religious observances that acknowledged the machine spirits inhabiting their augmented bodies. Augmentation also created new vulnerabilities that required careful consideration and protective measures. Electromagnetic pulse weapons could disrupt or damage mechanical components in ways that would not affect biological tissue, while certain forms of radiation could interfere with electronic systems without necessarily harming organic components. Tech adepts learned to recognize and prepare for these threats, incorporating shielding and backup systems into their augmentation designs, while developing tactical doctrines that minimized exposure to specific types of hazards. The relationship between augmentation level and spiritual advancement within Mechanicum doctrine created additional pressures and expectations for ambitious tech adepts seeking promotion within the hierarchy. The visible extent of mechanical modification served as an immediate indicator of an individual's commitment to the principles of the Cult Mechanicus and their progress toward the ultimate goal of transcending biological limitations. This system encouraged continuous augmentation as tech adepts sought to demonstrate their dedication and qualify for positions of greater authority and responsibility. The technical complexity of advanced augmentation procedures required specialized facilities and expertise that were available only at major Forge worlds and the most important Mechanicum installations. The surgical suites used for major augmentation incorporated sophisticated life support systems, precision manufacturing equipment, and sterile environments that prevented contamination during the delicate process of integrating biological and mechanical components. The procedures themselves could last for days or weeks, depending on the extent of modification being performed and the complexity of the systems being installed. Recovery from major augmentation often required extended periods of rehabilitation as the recipient learned to operate their new mechanical systems and adapted to altered sensory inputs and motor control systems. Physical therapy programs helped tech adepts develop proper coordination and control over augmented limbs and appendages, while cognitive training exercises ensured that enhanced processing capabilities were properly integrated with existing thought patterns and decision-making processes. The most extensive augmentations required months of careful adjustment and fine-tuning to achieve optimal performance and user satisfaction. The crimson surface of Mars stretched endlessly beneath towering spires of blackened metal and brass, their surfaces etched with 10,000 years of binary prayers and mathematical formulae that caught the weak light of Sol's distant fire. As the first and greatest of all Forge worlds, Mars commanded absolute authority over the scattered domains of the Mechanicum, its massive industrial complexes churning out the weapons and equipment that sustained the Imperium's endless wars. The planet's transformation from a barren wasteland into the galaxy's premier technological stronghold represented millennia of careful planning and sacred construction, with each new facility built according to ancient architectural principles that honored both practical necessity and religious obligation. The Fabricator General's authority emanated from the towering Olympus Mons complex, a vast pyramidal structure that rose from the Martian surface like a metallic mountain. Within its adamantine walls, the supreme leader of the Mechanicum maintained direct oversight of Forge operations spanning dozens of star systems, coordinating production schedules and resource allocation through a network of Vox transmissions and data streams that pulsed constantly through the planet's mechanical nervous system. The Fabricator General's personal chambers occupied the complex's highest levels, surrounded by cogitator banks and hololithic displays that provided real-time information about every significant Mechanicum operation throughout Imperial space. The hierarchical structure of Martian authority reflected the Mechanicum's fundamental belief in ordered technological progress, with senior Magos overseeing specific industrial sectors, while junior tech adepts managed individual production facilities and maintenance operations. This system ensured that every aspect of Forge operations remained subject to proper theological oversight while maintaining the efficiency necessary for large-scale military production. The most senior positions required not only technical expertise, but deep understanding of Mechanicum doctrine and the political acumen necessary to navigate the complex relationships between different Forge complexes and their specialized production capabilities. Mars itself had become almost unrecognizable from the world that humanity first colonized during the Dark Age of technology. Vast atmospheric processors maintained breathable air within the enclosed Forge complexes, while radiation shields protected workers from the planet's harsh environment. The surface bristled with transmission arrays, orbital defense platforms, and the massive launch facilities required to transport finished products to Imperial forces throughout the galaxy. Deep beneath the surface, geothermal taps provided power for the most energy-intensive manufacturing processes, while ancient vaults preserved STC fragments and technological artifacts recovered during the Great Crusade. The Forge world of Lucius represented one of the Mechanicum's most specialized and dangerous installations, its entire surface devoted to the production and refinement of plasma technology. The planet's unique geological structure incorporated naturally occurring plasma conduits that channeled superheated matter from the world's core to surface-based containment facilities, where tech adepts performed the delicate work of plasma weaponry assembly. The risks associated with this specialization were enormous, with containment failures capable of destroying entire manufacturing complexes in seconds, but the weapons produced on Lucius possessed power and reliability that made them highly prized by Imperial military commanders. Lucius tech adepts underwent specialized augmentation procedures that allowed them to work safely in the intense electromagnetic fields generated by plasma containment systems. Their optical mechs incorporated specialized filters that protected against plasma flash, while providing detailed spectral analysis of contained plasma streams. Modified respiratory systems filtered out ionized particles, while enhanced nervous systems provided the reaction speeds necessary to respond to containment emergencies before they could escalate into catastrophic failures. These modifications created a distinct subculture within the broader Mechanicum hierarchy, with Lucius-trained tech adepts recognizable by their distinctive augmentations and their mastery of plasma manipulation techniques. The planet's manufacturing complexes followed designs that prioritized safety and containment over production efficiency, with massive blast walls and emergency venting systems that could redirect plasma releases away from critical facilities. Each production line operated under constant monitoring by machine spirits specifically programmed to detect the subtle electromagnetic fluctuations that preceded containment failures. The tech adepts working these facilities developed an almost supernatural ability to sense impending problems, their augmented nervous systems detecting changes in plasma behavior that conventional sensors might miss until too late. Metallica's industrial landscape presented a stark contrast to Lucius's plasma-wreathed foundries, with endless assembly lines producing the tanks, transports, and heavy equipment that formed the backbone of Imperial military logistics. The Forge world's specialization in vehicle production required different technical expertise and manufacturing capabilities, with vast automated assembly systems capable of producing hundreds of vehicles simultaneously while maintaining the quality standards demanded by Imperial military doctrine. The planet's tech adepts focused on mechanical engineering and systems integration rather than exotic energy manipulation, developing expertise in power plant design, armor fabrication, and the complex logistics required for large-scale vehicle production. The Metallica Forges incorporated sophisticated quality control systems that tested every component and subsystem before final assembly, ensuring that vehicles leaving the production lines met or exceeded Imperial specifications for durability and combat effectiveness. These testing procedures combined traditional mechanical stress analysis with ritual observances designed to verify the spiritual purity of manufactured components. Machine spirits inhabiting completed vehicles underwent extensive evaluation to ensure proper integration with mechanical systems and appropriate responsiveness to operator commands. Metallica's vehicle designs reflected the Forge world's emphasis on reliability and maintainability over exotic capabilities, producing tanks and transports that could operate effectively in a wide variety of combat environments while requiring minimal specialized maintenance. The planet's tech adepts developed modular construction techniques that allowed for rapid field repairs and component replacement, recognizing that Imperial forces often operated far from major supply bases for extended periods. This practical approach to engineering earned Metallica vehicles a reputation for dependability that made them highly sought after by Imperial commanders who valued consistent performance over spectacular capabilities. Agrippina occupied a position of particular strategic importance within the Mechanicum hierarchy due to its location near the Eye of Terror and its specialization in defensive technologies. The Forge world's industrial complexes focused on the production of void shields, fortress systems, and the specialized equipment required for extended siege warfare. Agrippina Tech adepts developed expertise in defensive engineering and fortification design that proved invaluable during the numerous conflicts that erupted along the Imperium's chaotic borders. The planet's strategic location also made it a crucial staging area for military operations directed against chaos incursions and Xenos threats emerging from the galactic fringe. The defensive systems protecting Agrippina itself represented some of the most sophisticated fortification technology available to the Imperium, with multiple layers of void shields, orbital defense platforms, and ground-based weapon systems that could repel even the largest enemy fleets. The planet's surface bristled with fortress complexes and bunker systems that incorporated lessons learned from centuries of siege warfare, providing both production facilities and military strongholds that could continue operations even under direct enemy assault. These installations served as testing grounds for new defensive technologies while providing practical demonstrations of Agrippina's engineering capabilities. The Forge world's specialization in siege warfare equipment extended beyond simple defensive systems to encompass the massive artillery pieces and siege engines required for attacking heavily fortified positions. Agrippina produced siege cannons, incorporated advanced targeting systems, and ammunition handling mechanisms that allowed for sustained bombardment operations against enemy fortifications. The planet's tech adepts developed specialized expertise in ballistics calculation and structural analysis that enabled them to design weapons capable of breaching even the most sophisticated defensive systems. The industrial religious complexes that dominated every major Forge world represented unique syntheses of manufacturing capability and spiritual devotion that distinguished Mechanicum installations from conventional Imperial factories. These facilities incorporated vast cathedral-like spaces where production lines operated under the watchful gaze of towering statues depicting the machine god and the Omnissiah. The constant background noise of manufacturing operations mixed with the electronic hymns of binary cant to create an atmosphere that was simultaneously industrial and devotional. Manufactorums represented the basic unit of Forge World industrial organization, with each facility dedicated to specific categories of equipment production, while maintaining the flexibility necessary to adapt to changing military requirements. These installations incorporated sophisticated automation systems that handled routine assembly operations while preserving human oversight for critical quality control and spiritual observance functions. The machine spirits inhabiting Manufactorum equipment required regular appeasement through ritual maintenance and ceremonial offerings, creating a complex schedule of religious observances that had to be coordinated with production deadlines and resource allocation requirements. Tech shrines served as focal points for the religious activities that permeated every aspect of Forge World operations, providing spaces for prayer, meditation, and the performance of elaborate technological rituals. These facilities housed the most sacred artifacts and SDC fragments possessed by each Forge World, along with the archives and libraries that preserved millennia of accumulated technological knowledge. Senior tech adepts spent significant portions of their time in tech shrines, studying ancient texts and communing with machine spirits to gain insights that could improve manufacturing processes or reveal new applications for existing technologies. The construction of Titan Legion facilities represented the pinnacle of Forge World industrial capability, requiring resources and expertise that exceeded the capabilities of lesser manufacturing installations. These massive complexes incorporated specialized foundries for producing adamantine armor plating, plasma reactors capable of generating the enormous power requirements of Titan weapon systems, and the sophisticated assembly facilities necessary for constructing war machines that stood dozens of meters tall. The process of building a single Titan required months or years of careful work by teams of the most skilled tech adepts, with each component manufactured according to ancient patterns that had been refined over millennia of continuous production. Titan construction facilities operated under the most stringent security and quality control procedures within the entire Mechanicum hierarchy, as the loss of a single war machine represented not only an enormous waste of resources, but a spiritual catastrophe that could affect the morale and effectiveness of entire Titan legions. The machine spirits inhabiting completed Titans possessed complexity and independence that approached true artificial intelligence, requiring careful nurturing and spiritual preparation during the construction process to ensure proper bonding with their eventual Princeps operators. The relationship between Forge Worlds and their associated night houses created complex webs of mutual obligation and support that strengthened both institutions while preserving their distinct identities and traditions. These alliances typically originated during the Age of Strife, when isolated human colonies developed feudal societies centered around the operation and maintenance of night walkers discovered in ancient SDC caches. The arrival of Mechanicum exploration fleets during the Great Crusade created opportunities for formal alliance that provided night houses with technical support and spare parts in exchange for military service and resource access. The ancient oaths of fealty that bound night houses to their patron Forge Worlds incorporated both practical agreements regarding military support and resource sharing, along with spiritual commitments that acknowledged the sacred nature of the technologies involved. These oaths typically required Knight houses to provide military forces for Forge world defense and to support Mechanicum operations in their local stellar regions. In exchange, Forge worlds provided technical expertise, replacement parts, and the specialized maintenance required to keep Night Walkers operational over centuries of service. The integration of Knight houses into Mechanicum military doctrine created combined arms formations that maximized the strengths of both Titan legions and Knight households while minimizing their respective weaknesses. Night Walkers provided speed and flexibility that complemented the massive firepower and armor protection of Titans, while Titan support gave Knight formations the heavy weapons capability necessary to engage the largest enemy war machines. These combined formations proved devastatingly effective during the Great Crusade and subsequent conflicts, establishing tactical doctrines that would influence Imperial military thinking for millennia to come. The mutual protection agreements between Forge worlds and Knight houses extended beyond simple military alliance to encompass technological sharing and cultural exchange that enriched both institutions. Knight pilots often trained on Forge worlds to improve their understanding of the technologies they operated, while tech adepts studied Night Walker designs to gain insights that could improve Titan construction and maintenance procedures. These exchanges created lasting bonds between individual Knights and tech adepts that transcended formal alliance agreements, fostering personal relationships that strengthened the overall partnership between the two institutions. The crimson robes that marked the highest echelons of Mechanicum authority swept across the polished adamantine floors of the Fabricator General's audience chamber, each movement calculated to demonstrate both the dignity of office and the mechanical precision that defined the Cult Mechanicus. The Fabricator General stood as the supreme temporal and spiritual leader of all Forge worlds, wielding authority that extended across hundreds of star systems and commanded the loyalty of billions of tech adepts, servitors, and Skitarii warriors. This position represented not merely administrative control, but divine mandate, as the Fabricator General served as the machine god's primary representative in the material universe, and the Omnissiah's chosen regent over all technological matters within the Imperium. The Fabricator General's integration into the Imperial power structure through membership in the High Lords of Terra created a unique position that balanced Mechanicum autonomy with Imperial oversight. This arrangement, established during the original Treaty of Mars, ensured that the Cult Mechanicus maintained representation at the highest levels of Imperial governance, while acknowledging the Emperor's ultimate authority as the Omnissiah. The Fabricator General's presence among the High Lords provided a crucial voice for technological concerns in Imperial strategic planning, ensuring that military campaigns received adequate logistical support and that new technologies were properly integrated into Imperial doctrine. The selection of each new Fabricator General followed ancient protocols that combined democratic elements with divine revelation, as the senior Magos of Mars convened in sacred conclave to choose their new leader through a process that incorporated both political negotiation and technological divination. Candidates for the position typically possessed centuries of experience in Forge management, extensive augmentation that demonstrated their commitment to mechanical transcendence, and the political acumen necessary to navigate the complex relationships between different Forge worlds and Imperial institutions. The chosen Fabricator General underwent elaborate consecration rituals that formally invested them with the authority to speak for the machine god and command obedience from all servants of the Omnissiah. The daily responsibilities of the Fabricator General encompassed both the immediate concerns of Martian Forge operations and the broader strategic coordination required to support Imperial military efforts across the galaxy. Each morning began with detailed briefings from senior Magos regarding production schedules, resource allocation, and technical developments that might affect overall Mechanicum capabilities. These sessions incorporated vast amounts of data transmitted through secure Vox networks from dozens of Forge worlds, creating a comprehensive picture of Mechanicum activities that required sophisticated analysis and rapid decision-making. The Fabricator General's personal augmentations reflected both the practical requirements of their position and the spiritual significance of their role as the machine god's primary representative. Advanced cogitator arrays provided the processing power necessary to analyze complex industrial data and coordinate activities across multiple star systems simultaneously. Specialized Vox systems allowed direct communication with Forge world leaders throughout Imperial space, while enhanced optical systems provided detailed analysis of technical specifications and manufacturing reports. The most significant augmentations incorporated direct neural interfaces with the vast cogitator networks that managed Martian industrial operations, allowing the Fabricator General to monitor and adjust production schedules through pure thought. Beneath the Fabricator General's supreme authority, the Magos ranks formed the backbone of Mechanicum leadership, with each senior tech adept specializing in specific technological disciplines, while maintaining overall responsibility for significant Forge operations or research programs. The rank of Magos required not only technical mastery, but demonstrated ability to manage large-scale industrial operations and coordinate the activities of hundreds or thousands of junior tech adepts. Promotion to Magos status typically occurred after decades of service in junior positions, with candidates undergoing extensive evaluation of both their technical capabilities and their commitment to Mechanicum doctrine. Magos Dominus represented the most senior category of Forge leadership, typically commanding entire manufacturing complexes or overseeing production of specific weapon systems across multiple facilities. These individuals possess the authority to modify production schedules, allocate resources between different projects, and coordinate with Imperial military commanders regarding equipment requirements and delivery schedules. The augmentations required for Magos Dominus status included sophisticated command and control systems that allowed direct oversight of manufacturing operations through neural interface with factory machine spirits. The daily routine of a Magos Dominus began before dawn with detailed analysis of production reports and resource consumption, data transmitted overnight from subordinate facilities. These reviews identified potential problems or inefficiencies that required immediate attention, while highlighting opportunities for optimization or expansion of manufacturing capabilities. Morning briefings with senior tech adepts provided additional detail regarding specific technical issues or personnel problems that might affect overall productivity. The remainder of each day typically involved direct inspection of manufacturing facilities, meetings with Imperial procurement officers, and participation in the ritual observances that maintained proper spiritual atmosphere within Forge complexes. Magos Biologists occupied a specialized niche within the Mechanicum hierarchy, focusing on the intersection between biological and mechanical systems that defined much of the cult's technological philosophy. These individuals possessed deep understanding of human physiology and the complex procedures required for successful augmentation, along with expertise in servitor creation and maintenance that proved essential for large-scale industrial operations. The biological sciences practiced by Magos Biologists included not only human enhancement, but analysis of alien physiologies, development of specialized life support systems, and the creation of hybrid biological mechanical organisms that served specific industrial or military functions. The laboratories operated by Magos Biologists incorporated sophisticated life support systems and sterile environments necessary for delicate biological research and surgical procedures. These facilities housed extensive collections of biological specimens, genetic samples, and preserved organs that provided raw materials for augmentation procedures and research into new forms of human enhancement. The most advanced laboratories included complete surgical suites capable of performing the most complex augmentation procedures, along with recovery facilities where patients adapted to new mechanical systems under careful medical supervision. Research conducted by Magos Biologists extended beyond simple human augmentation to encompass fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness and the optimal balance between biological and mechanical components in enhanced humans. These investigations required careful theological consideration to ensure compatibility with Mechanicum doctrine, while pushing the boundaries of what was possible through technological intervention in human development. The most successful research programs developed new augmentation techniques that improved integration between organic and mechanical systems, while reducing rejection rates and recovery times. Mago's Explorator represented the adventurous wing of the Mechanicum hierarchy, leading expedition fleets into unexplored regions of the galaxy in search of lost STC systems, ancient technological artifacts, and new worlds suitable for Forge development. These individuals combined technical expertise with the leadership skills necessary for long-range exploration missions that might last for years or decades, while operating far from Imperial supply lines and communication networks. The responsibilities of Mago's Explorator included not only the discovery and recovery of technological artifacts, but the evaluation of newly discovered worlds for potential colonization and industrial development. Explorator fleets typically included a diverse mix of vessels ranging from fast scout ships capable of rapid reconnaissance to massive factory ships equipped with the manufacturing capabilities necessary to establish new forge installations on suitable worlds. The crews of these fleets combined tech adepts with specialized exploration experience, Skitarii forces trained for operations in unknown environments, and servitor populations programmed for construction and mining operations. The most successful Explorator missions established new forge worlds that contributed to overall Mechanicum capabilities for millennia after their initial discovery and development. The personal equipment carried by Mago's Explorator reflected the dangerous and unpredictable nature of their missions, with advanced sensors capable of detecting technological artifacts and analyzing alien technologies, sophisticated communication systems that could maintain contact with distant forge worlds, and defensive systems designed to protect against unknown threats. Many Explorator Magos incorporated specialized augmentations that enhanced their ability to survive in hostile environments, including radiation shielding, atmospheric processors, and enhanced sensory systems that could detect dangerous conditions before they became lethal. Tech priests formed the largest category of ordained Mechanicum clergy, encompassing thousands of individuals with specialized technical training and sufficient augmentation to perform complex maintenance and manufacturing tasks. These individuals served as the primary interface between the Mechanicum hierarchy and the broader Imperial military and civilian populations that depended on technological support. Tech priests typically possessed between 5 and 15 major augmentations, providing them with capabilities that far exceeded baseline human limitations, while maintaining enough biological components to preserve human judgment and creativity. The training required for tech priest ordination typically lasted between 10 and 20 years, depending on the individual's chosen specialization and their aptitude for both technical learning and theological study. Candidates underwent progressive augmentation throughout their training period, with each new mechanical component accompanied by extensive instruction in its proper operation and maintenance. The theological education provided to tech priest candidates covered the fundamental principles of the Cult Mechanicus, the proper performance of technological rituals, and the complex doctrinal questions that arose from the integration of Imperial and Mechanicum belief systems. Tech priest specializations encompassed virtually every aspect of Imperial technology, from the maintenance of simple mechanical devices to the operation of sophisticated weapon systems and the construction of new industrial facilities. Combat engineers specialized in battlefield repair and the operation of siege equipment, while naval tech priests focused on the complex systems required for interstellar travel and void warfare. Civilian specialists worked with planetary governors and imperial administrators to maintain the industrial infrastructure that supported human civilization throughout the galaxy. Engineers represented the most numerous category of Mechanicum personnel, serving directly with Imperial military forces, providing essential technical support that kept vehicles operational, weapons functional, and communication systems active during extended campaigns. These individuals typically possessed more limited augmentation than full tech priests, but maintained sufficient technical expertise to handle most routine maintenance tasks and emergency repairs. Engineer training emphasized practical problem solving and field expedient repair techniques, rather than the theoretical knowledge and ritual observances that characterized higher levels of mechanicum education. Imperial Guard regiments typically included several engineers assigned to maintain the unit's vehicles, weapons, and communication equipment throughout extended campaigns. These individuals worked closely with regimental quartermasters and supply officers to ensure adequate stocks of replacement parts and consumable supplies, while coordinating with higher-level mechanicum personnel for major repairs or equipment upgrades. The presence of trained engineers often meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic equipment failure during critical operations. Space Marine chapters maintained their own technical specialists through the Tech Marine program, which sent selected battle brothers to Mars for extensive training in equipment maintenance and battlefield repair techniques. These individuals returned to their chapters with augmentations and technical knowledge that allowed them to maintain the sophisticated equipment used by Space Marines while preserving their primary identity as warriors rather than tech adepts. Tech Marines occupied a unique position within Space Marine hierarchies, respected for their technical expertise, while sometimes viewed with suspicion due to their exposure to mechanicum doctrine and practices. Servitors represented the ultimate expression of mechanicum philosophy regarding the optimization of human resources for specific technical tasks. These lobotomized cyborgs combined human biological components with sophisticated mechanical systems to create specialized workers capable of performing complex tasks with perfect reliability and absolute obedience. Servitor creation involved extensive surgical modification of human subjects, typically criminals or volunteers, to remove higher brain functions while preserving the motor skills and basic cognitive abilities necessary for their assigned tasks. The manufacturing processes used to create servitors incorporated both advanced surgical techniques and sophisticated cybernetic implantation procedures that required the expertise of senior magos biologists and specialized technical personnel. Each servitor design was optimized for specific functions, with construction servitors incorporating enhanced strength and durability for heavy labor, while technical servitors received specialized tools and sensory equipment for precision manufacturing work. Combat servitors included weapon systems and armor protection that made them effective battlefield units, while maintaining the absolute loyalty and fearlessness that characterized all servitor types. Servitor maintenance represented a significant ongoing responsibility for mechanicum personnel, as these cyborgs required regular inspection and adjustment to maintain optimal performance. The biological components of servitors remained subject to normal human physiological processes, requiring nutrition, medical care, and periodic replacement of worn or damaged tissues. The mechanical components required standard maintenance procedures, along with specialized attention to the neural interfaces that controlled servitor behavior and task performance. The Skitarii legions served as the primary military arm of the Mechanicum, providing the combat forces necessary to protect Forge worlds, support explorator missions, and participate in Imperial military campaigns alongside conventional Guard regiments and Space Marine forces. These augmented warriors combined human tactical intelligence with mechanical enhancements that provided capabilities far exceeding normal human soldiers, while maintaining the flexibility and adaptability that distinguished them from purely mechanical combat units. Skitarii augmentations focused on combat effectiveness rather than technical expertise, creating soldiers who could operate sophisticated weapons and equipment while retaining the aggressive instincts necessary for effective warfare. Skitarii Rangers specialized in reconnaissance and long-range combat operations, utilizing advanced camouflage systems and sophisticated targeting equipment to engage enemy forces from concealed positions. These warriors carried specialized long-range weapons that incorporated advanced targeting systems and ammunition types designed for specific battlefield roles. Ranger augmentations included enhanced sensory systems for target acquisition and threat detection, along with improved respiratory and circulatory systems that allowed extended operations in hostile environments without external life support. Skitarii Vanguard served as assault troops specializing in close-range combat and the operation of exotic weapon systems that required specialized training and augmentation to use safely. These warriors carried weapons that utilized dangerous energy types or exotic ammunition that could prove hazardous to unaugmented personnel, making their enhanced physiology essential for effective employment of such systems. Vanguard augmentations included radiation shielding, enhanced reflexes for close combat, and specialized nervous system modifications that allowed rapid coordination of multiple weapon systems simultaneously. Specialized Skitarii units included heavy weapons teams equipped with the most powerful portable weapons available to Mechanicum forces, infiltrator squads trained for covert operations behind enemy lines, and technical specialists who combined combat capabilities with the expertise necessary to operate and maintain sophisticated battlefield equipment. These elite formations typically received the most extensive augmentations and training available to Skitarii forces, creating warriors who could match Space Marines in combat effectiveness while maintaining the technical expertise that distinguished Mechanicum military doctrine from conventional Imperial approaches to warfare. The thunderous footfalls of a warlord titan echoed across the scarred battlefields of the Great Crusade, each step crushing rockcrete and metal beneath adamantine feet that had walked among the stars for millennia. These colossal war machines represented the ultimate expression of the Mechanicum's military doctrine, towering god engines that combined devastating firepower with the accumulated wisdom of ages past. Standing nearly 40 meters tall, a warlord titan dominated any battlefield through sheer presence alone, its massive frame bristling with weapon systems capable of reducing entire city blocks to molten slag in seconds. The machine's spirit inhabiting each warlord possessed complexity that approached true artificial intelligence, its consciousness shaped by centuries of combat experience and the accumulated memories of every princeps who had ever bonded with its neural systems. The construction of a single warlord titan required the combined efforts of dozens of tech adepts working for months or years to assemble components manufactured according to standard template construct patterns that dated back to humanity's golden age. The plasma reactor that powered each war machine incorporated technologies that few contemporary tech adepts fully understood, their operation dependent on ritual observances and maintenance procedures passed down through generations of Titan crews. The void shields protecting each warlord operated through principles that bordered on the arcane, manipulating localized space-time distortions to deflect incoming weapons fire into parallel dimensions where it could cause no harm to the sacred machine beneath. Warlord armament configurations varied according to mission requirements and the preferences of their assigned legio, but all variants incorporated weapons systems that could engage targets across the entire spectrum of battlefield threats. The massive volcano cannon mounted in the war machine's carapace could punch through the heaviest fortifications or reduce enemy titans to scrap metal with single shots, while twin-turbo laser destructors provided sustained firepower against formations of lighter vehicles and infantry. Close-range defense systems included Apocalypse missile launchers that saturated target areas with high-explosive warheads and defensive weapons designed to intercept incoming projectiles before they could penetrate the Titan's void shields. The princeps commanding each warlord underwent decades of training and neural conditioning to achieve the mental integration necessary for effective Titan operation. The command throne incorporated direct neural interfaces that allowed the princeps to experience the battlefield through the Titan's sensors, while maintaining conscious control over the war machine's movements and weapon systems. This integration process created a symbiotic relationship between human consciousness and machine spirit that transcended simple mechanical operation, producing a hybrid entity that combined human tactical intelligence with mechanical precision and durability. The most experienced princeps developed such close bonds with their titans that they could anticipate the machine spirit's reactions and coordinate complex maneuvers through pure intuition rather than conscious command input. Reaver Titans served as the backbone of most Titan legions, providing a balance between firepower and mobility that made them effective in a wide variety of combat situations. Standing approximately 22 meters tall, Reavers possessed sufficient speed and agility to outmaneuver heavier war machines, while mounting weapon systems capable of engaging any enemy target. The standard Reaver configuration incorporated a volcano cannon or laser blaster in the carapace mount, with arm-mounted weapons that could include Gatling blasters for anti-infantry work, power fists for close combat, or specialized systems like melta cannons for bunker-busting operations. Reaver construction required less time and resources than the massive Warlord variants, allowing Forge Worlds to produce these war machines in greater numbers while maintaining the quality standards demanded by Titan Legion commanders. The plasma reactors powering Reaver Titans incorporated simplified versions of the technologies used in larger war machines, though they still required extensive ritual maintenance and the ministrations of dedicated tech adepts to maintain optimal performance. The machine spirits inhabiting Reavers possessed less complexity than their larger cousins, but demonstrated remarkable adaptability and tactical awareness that made them effective in rapidly changing combat situations. Reaver crews typically consisted of a princeps and 2 moderati, who assisted with weapons control and system management during combat operations. The reduced crew requirements compared to larger titans allowed legions to field more war machines with available personnel, while maintaining effective command and control over their operations. Reaver princeps often served apprenticeships aboard larger titans before receiving their own commands, gaining experience in Titan operations, while learning the subtle art of machine spirit communion that distinguished truly effective commanders from mere technicians. Warhound Scout Titans represented the fastest and most agile members of the Titan legions, sacrificing heavy armor and massive weapons for speed and maneuverability that allowed them to fulfill reconnaissance and harassment roles that larger war machines could not perform effectively. Standing 14 meters tall, Warhounds could achieve remarkable speeds across broken terrain while mounting weapon systems sophisticated enough to threaten much larger opponents through coordinated attacks and superior positioning. Their primary role involved screening larger titans from enemy infiltrators and providing early warning of approaching threats, though they proved equally effective at hunting enemy armor formations and disrupting supply lines behind enemy positions. Warhound armament focused on versatility and rapid target engagement, rather than the overwhelming firepower characteristic of larger titans. Plasma blasters provided effective anti-armor capability, while Vulcan mega-bolters delivered devastating firepower against infantry and light vehicles. Turbo laser destructors offered long-range precision engagement capability, while Inferno cannons created walls of flame that could clear entire sectors of enemy positions. The modular weapon mounting systems allowed field modification of Warhound armament to match specific mission requirements, with experienced crews capable of reconfiguring their war machines between engagements to optimize performance against anticipated threats. The machine spirits inhabiting Warhound Titans displayed characteristics that reflected their role as scouts and hunters, demonstrating aggressive tendencies and remarkable independence that sometimes challenged their princeps operators. These war machines possessed an almost predatory awareness of their surroundings, their sensors constantly scanning for targets and threats, while their weapon systems tracked potential engagement opportunities. The bond between Warhound princeps and their machines often developed more quickly than with larger titans, though it required careful management to prevent the machine spirit's aggressive instincts from overwhelming human judgment during critical tactical decisions. The Knight houses that served alongside Titan legions maintained traditions and technologies that predated the Mechanicum's rise to prominence, their ancestral war machines representing a different approach to the construction and operation of large combat walkers. Night Walkers stood roughly half the height of Scout Titans, but possessed agility and weapon systems that made them effective battlefield units capable of operating independently or in support of larger formations. The feudal societies that had developed around night maintenance and operation created distinct military traditions that complemented Mechanicum doctrine while preserving their own cultural identity and command structures. The relationship between night houses and their patron forge worlds created complex webs of mutual obligation that strengthened both institutions through shared technological knowledge and military cooperation. Ancient oaths of fealty bound each night house to provide military service to their associated forge world while receiving technical support and replacement parts necessary to maintain their war machines across centuries of operation. These arrangements typically included provisions for training night pilots in advanced combat techniques and providing access to specialized equipment that enhanced the effectiveness of night formations in specific combat roles. Night Paladin variants emphasized ranged combat capability through their rapid-fire battle cannons and supporting weapon systems that could engage enemy armor at extended ranges while maintaining sufficient mobility to avoid return fire. The thermal lances mounted as secondary weapons provided devastating close-range firepower that could penetrate the heaviest armor, while heavy stubbers offered anti-personnel capability against infantry formations. The combination of firepower and mobility made Night Paladins effective in both offensive operations and defensive actions, where their speed allowed rapid response to emerging threats. Knight-errant configurations focused on close combat operations through their Reaper chainswords and thermal lances that could destroy enemy vehicles and fortifications through direct assault. These war machines typically operated in coordination with other knights or supporting forces that could provide covering fire while the errants closed to effective combat range. The pilot training required for effective errant operation emphasized aggressive tactics and precise maneuvering that maximized the effectiveness of close combat weapons while minimizing exposure to enemy fire during approach phases. The Throne Mechanicum that controlled each Night Walker incorporated technologies that created direct neural links between pilot and machine, though these systems operated according to different principles than the command interfaces used in Titan operations. Night pilots maintained their individual consciousness and decision-making authority while gaining enhanced reflexes and sensory input that improved their combat effectiveness. The machine spirits inhabiting Night Walkers possessed less complexity than those found in Titans, but demonstrated remarkable loyalty and responsiveness to their bonded pilots. Mechanicus spacecraft represented the cutting edge of Imperial naval technology, incorporating systems and capabilities that exceeded anything available to conventional Imperial Navy vessels. Arc Mechanicus ships served as the primary vessels for explorator fleets, combining massive manufacturing capabilities with the defensive systems and exploration equipment necessary for long-range missions into uncharted regions of the galaxy. These vessels incorporated advanced sensor arrays capable of detecting technological artifacts and analyzing alien technologies from vast distances, while their manufacturing facilities could produce replacement parts and new equipment during extended voyages far from Imperial supply bases. The largest Arc Mechanicus vessels approached the size of Imperial Navy battleships while incorporating entirely different internal configurations optimized for technological research and manufacturing rather than pure military operations. Vast machine shops and assembly facilities occupied the central sections of these ships, served by armies of servitors and tech adepts who maintained continuous production schedules throughout long voyages. Advanced cogitator networks coordinated manufacturing operations while providing the computational power necessary for complex research projects and technological analysis. Explorator fleets typically included multiple vessel types designed for specific aspects of long-range exploration and technological recovery missions. Fast scout vessels provided reconnaissance capability and early warning of potential threats, while heavily armed escort ships protected the valuable Cult Mechanicus vessels from enemy attack. Specialized recovery ships incorporated advanced cargo handling systems and containment facilities designed to safely transport discovered technologies and artifacts back to Forge worlds for detailed analysis and integration into existing manufacturing processes. The crews of Mechanicus vessels differed significantly from their Imperial Navy counterparts, with tech adepts and servitors handling most operational functions, while Skitarii forces provided security and boarding capabilities. Ship operations followed ritual schedules that combined practical necessity with religious observance, ensuring that all systems received proper maintenance while honoring the machine spirits that inhabited the vessel's complex technological systems. The most senior tech adepts aboard each ship maintained direct neural interfaces with the vessel's cogitator networks, allowing them to monitor and adjust ship operations through pure thought while coordinating with other vessels in the fleet through encrypted Vox transmissions. Volkite weaponry represented one of the most distinctive categories of Mechanicus military technology, utilizing focused thermal rays that could disintegrate organic targets while proving effective against armored opponents through sustained fire. These weapons operated according to principles that few contemporary tech adepts fully understood, their construction requiring access to rare materials and manufacturing techniques that limited their production to the most important Forge worlds. The distinctive crackling discharge produced by Volkite weapons created psychological effects that often proved as valuable as their physical damage, with enemy forces frequently breaking under the terrifying spectacle of their comrades being reduced to ash and vapor. Volkite Serpenta pistols served as sidearms for senior tech adepts and Skitarii officers, providing personal defense capability that could penetrate most forms of personal armor while maintaining the compact size necessary for concealed carry. The focusing crystals required for these weapons demanded careful maintenance and periodic replacement, making them expensive to operate but highly effective when properly maintained. Larger Volkite weapons included culverin heavy weapons that could engage multiple targets simultaneously and carronade systems designed for vehicle mounting that provided devastating anti-personnel firepower. Conversion beamers represented perhaps the most exotic weapons in the Mechanicus arsenal, utilizing dimensional manipulation technology that increased in destructive power with range rather than decreasing like conventional weapons. These devices operated by converting matter into energy through controlled dimensional rifts, with longer flight times allowing more complete conversion that resulted in increasingly devastating effects on target. The theoretical principles underlying conversion beamer operation remained poorly understood even by senior magos, requiring extensive ritual preparation and careful maintenance to ensure reliable function. The construction of conversion beamers required access to archaeotech components and rare materials that made them among the most valuable weapons in Mechanicus armories. Each weapon incorporated focusing arrays and dimensional stabilization systems that demanded constant attention from qualified tech adepts, while the power requirements limited their use to vehicles or fixed installations capable of providing adequate energy supplies. The unpredictable nature of dimensional manipulation made conversion beamers dangerous to operate, with weapon malfunctions potentially creating spatial anomalies that could destroy the operators along with their intended targets. Archaeotech devices discovered during explorator missions represented fragments of humanity's lost technological heritage that often possessed capabilities exceeding anything in current Imperial production. These artifacts required extensive study and reverse engineering efforts before they could be safely integrated into Mechanicus equipment inventories, with many devices remaining partially understood despite decades of research. The most valuable archaeotech discoveries included complete STC fragments that provided manufacturing data for entire categories of equipment, though such finds remained extremely rare and typically required the resources of entire Forge worlds to properly exploit. Digital weapons represented a category of archaeotech that incorporated miniaturized energy projection systems into finger-mounted devices that could deliver lethal attacks without obvious external appearance. These weapons proved particularly valuable for assassination and covert operations, allowing the user to eliminate targets without revealing their armed status to casual observation. The power cells required for digital weapons utilized technologies that contemporary Mechanicus scientists could not reproduce, limiting their availability to recovered artifacts and making them highly prized by senior tech adepts and Skitarii commanders. Graviton weapons manipulated local gravitational fields to crush targets or create areas of altered gravity that could immobilize enemy forces and disrupt their equipment. These devices operated according to principles that bordered on the theoretical limits of Imperial scientific understanding, requiring extensive computational support and power generation systems that limited their deployment to specialized applications. Graviton cannons mounted on vehicles could create localized gravity wells that pulled enemy forces out of cover or compressed them into dense masses vulnerable to conventional weapons fire. The maintenance and operation of exotic Mechanicus weaponry required specialized training and augmentation that distinguished their users from conventional Imperial military personnel. Tech adepts operating these systems underwent extensive modification to interface directly with weapon control systems, while protecting themselves from the dangerous energies and exotic effects produced by their equipment. The ritual observances required for proper weapon function incorporated both practical maintenance procedures and spiritual preparations designed to appease the complex machine spirits inhabiting these sophisticated devices. The first whispers of sedition reached the Fabricator General's inner sanctum through encrypted data streams that bypassed the standard Vox networks linking Mars to the distant battlefields of the Great Crusade. Kelberhal stood motionless before the towering hololithic displays that showed the disposition of Mechanicum forces throughout Imperial space, his extensively augmented form processing information that would fundamentally alter the relationship between the Cult Mechanicus and the Emperor's grand design. The reports arriving from Istvan V painted a picture of betrayal so profound that even the Fabricator General's mechanical components struggled to calculate the full implications of what Horus Lupercal had accomplished through his coordinated strike against Loyalist forces. The War Master's emissaries had been arriving on Mars for months, their diplomatic overtures carefully crafted to exploit the growing tensions between Mechanicum doctrine and Imperial policy. These representatives spoke of the Emperor's abandonment of the Great Crusade, his retreat to Terra for mysterious projects that seemed to contradict his role as the Omnissiah. They presented evidence of the Imperial truth's fundamental opposition to the religious practices that formed the core of Mechanicum identity, suggesting that the Master of Mankind intended to suppress the Cult Mechanicus once his military campaigns were complete. Most compelling of all, they offered access to technologies and knowledge that the Emperor had forbidden, promising revelations that could advance human understanding beyond the constraints imposed by Imperial doctrine. Kelberhal's personal transformation from loyal servant of the Omnissiah to architect of Mechanicum rebellion reflected the complex theological and political pressures that had been building within the Cult Mechanicus throughout the Great Crusade's later phases. The Fabricator General had witnessed the Emperor's increasing distance from Mechanicum affairs, his apparent disinterest in the technological marvels being discovered by explorator fleets, and his prohibition against research into certain categories of archaeotech that seemed to offer unprecedented opportunities for human advancement. The War Master's agents exploited these concerns with surgical precision, presenting arguments that resonated with Kelberhal's deepest convictions about humanity's technological destiny. The decision to ally with Horus required careful preparation and coordination throughout the Mechanicum hierarchy, as the Fabricator General could not simply declare for the War Master without ensuring adequate support from the Forge Worlds and their associated military forces. Secret communications networks carried encrypted messages to trusted Magos throughout Imperial space, testing their loyalty and gauging their willingness to support a rebellion against the Emperor's authority. The responses revealed a Mechanicum deeply divided along ideological lines, with roughly half of the major Forge worlds expressing support for Kelber Hal's position, while the remainder maintained their loyalty to the Treaty of Mars and their recognition of the Emperor as the Omnissiah. The theological justifications for rebellion required sophisticated doctrinal development that could reconcile Mechanicum support for Horus with their fundamental beliefs about the machine god and the Omnissiah's divine nature. Kelber Hal's tech theologians developed arguments suggesting that the Emperor had never truly been the Omnissiah, that his identification as such had been a mistake based on incomplete understanding of the prophecies. They proposed that the real Omnissiah remained to be revealed, possibly through the technological advancement that Horus promised to support. Alternative interpretations suggested that the Emperor had been the Omnissiah, but had fallen from grace through his abandonment of the Great Crusade and his suppression of technological progress, making rebellion not only justified but religiously mandated. The practical preparations for civil war within the Mechanicum required months of careful planning and resource accumulation, as both sides recognized that control of Mars itself would largely determine the outcome of any extended conflict. Kelber Hal's supporters began stockpiling weapons and ammunition in strategic locations throughout the planet's vast industrial complexes, while loyalist forces under Fabricator Locum Kane attempted to secure critical manufacturing facilities and communication nodes. The Skitarii legions found themselves divided along the same lines as their tech adept commanders, with individual units splitting apart as officers declared for different sides in the developing conflict. The Schism of Mars erupted into open warfare when loyalist forces attempted to arrest Kelber Hal and his senior supporters during a formal session of the Martian Parliament. The Fabricator General's personal guard augmented Skitarii, equipped with the finest weapons available to Mechanicum forces, fought a running battle through the corridors of the Olympus Mons complex as they escorted their leader to prepared defensive positions in the planet's northern industrial sectors. The engagement escalated rapidly as both sides activated their military assets, transforming the red planet's surface into a battlefield where the galaxy's most advanced weapons clashed in displays of destructive power that had not been seen since the Dark Age of technology. The initial phases of the Martian Civil War demonstrated the horrific effectiveness of Mechanicum military technology when deployed against human targets rather than Xeno's enemies or primitive rebels. Volkite weapons reduced entire Skitarii formations to ash and vapor, while graviton cannons created localized space-time distortions that crushed armored vehicles and their crews into metallic paste. The exotic energies unleashed by conversion beamers and archaeotech devices created secondary effects that contaminated vast areas of the planet's surface, making them uninhabitable for decades to come. The machine spirits inhabiting the combatants' weapons and equipment seemed to sense the unnatural nature of the conflict, with many devices suffering mysterious malfunctions that forced their operators to rely on backup systems and improvised repairs. Fabricator Locum Kane's loyalist forces initially controlled the primary spaceports and communication facilities that linked Mars to the broader Imperial war effort, allowing them to coordinate with Terra and request reinforcement from other loyal Forge worlds. However, Kelber Hal's supporters held the majority of the planet's manufacturing capacity and had been preparing for extended siege warfare since the first approaches from Horus's emissaries. The traitor Mechanicum forces demonstrated remarkable innovation in developing new weapons and defensive systems specifically designed for urban warfare among the towering Forge complexes and industrial installations that dominated the Martian landscape. The siege of the Mondus Gamma facility became emblematic of the broader conflict's character, as loyalist defenders found themselves surrounded by traitor forces equipped with weapons that violated fundamental principles of Mechanicum doctrine. The traitors had begun incorporating technologies derived from Xeno's artifacts and forbidden archaeotech, creating hybrid weapons that combined human engineering with alien principles in ways that horrified their opponents. Plasma weapons that burned with unnatural colors, graviton devices that produced effects inconsistent with known physical laws, and energy projectors that seemed to draw power from sources beyond the material universe all appeared on the battlefield as Kelberhal's forces abandoned traditional constraints in their pursuit of victory. The loyalist defenders of Mondus Gamma included some of Mars's most conservative tech adepts, individuals who viewed the traitor's technological innovations as blasphemous violations of sacred principles that had guided human development for millennia. These defenders fought with desperate courage, knowing that defeat would mean not only death, but the corruption of everything they held sacred. Their defensive preparations incorporated traditional Mechanicum engineering principles, creating layered fortifications that channeled attacking forces into carefully prepared killing zones where conventional weapons could achieve maximum effectiveness. The battle for Mondus Gamma lasted for weeks, with both sides committing increasingly sophisticated weapons and tactics as the strategic importance of the facility became apparent. The complex housed one of Mars's primary SDC archives, containing manufacturing data for hundreds of different systems that could prove decisive in the broader civil war. Control of these templates would allow either side to produce specialized equipment in quantities that could tip the balance of power throughout the solar system. The fighting evolved from conventional assault and defense operations into a complex three-dimensional battle as both sides deployed tunnel networks, aerial units, and even orbital bombardment platforms in their efforts to secure the facility. The corruption that began to manifest among Kelberhal's forces represented a fundamental departure from everything the Mechanicum had stood for throughout its history. Tech adepts who had spent centuries pursuing mechanical perfection began incorporating organic elements into their augmentations, creating hybrid forms that combined human, mechanical, and alien characteristics in ways that violated basic principles of technological purity. These modifications often provided enhanced capabilities, including improved strength, exotic sensory abilities, and resistance to conventional weapons, but they came at the cost of spiritual contamination that gradually eroded the recipient's connection to the machine god. The first demon engines appeared on Martian battlefields when traitor tech adepts succeeded in binding warp entities into mechanical chassis, creating war machines that possessed capabilities exceeding anything in conventional Mechanicum arsenals. These abominations combined the raw destructive power of demonic essence with the precision and durability of advanced technology, producing weapons platforms that could engage multiple targets simultaneously while regenerating damage through supernatural means. The machine spirits that had once inhabited these devices were either destroyed or corrupted beyond recognition, replaced by malevolent intelligences that delighted in destruction and chaos. The creation of demon engines required extensive ritual preparation and the sacrifice of numerous human subjects, as the warp entities being bound demanded payment in blood and suffering before they would accept imprisonment within mechanical forms. The tech adepts conducting these rituals underwent profound psychological changes as they opened their minds to demonic influence, gradually losing their human characteristics as they became conduits for chaotic energies. Many of these individuals retained their technical expertise while gaining supernatural abilities that made them far more dangerous than conventional opponents, though they paid for these enhancements with their sanity and their souls. The Loyalist response to demon engine deployment involved desperate attempts to develop countermeasures against enemies that operated according to principles beyond conventional understanding. Traditional anti-armor weapons proved largely ineffective against targets that could regenerate damage through warp-based healing, while the psychological effects of facing such abominations caused morale problems among even the most disciplined Skitarii formations. Some loyalist tech adepts began experimenting with blessed weapons and sanctified ammunition, incorporating religious symbols and prayer-inscribed components into their equipment in hopes of finding weaknesses in their corrupted opponents. The broader implications of the Martian Civil War extended far beyond the Red Planet itself, as both sides attempted to secure support from Forge worlds throughout Imperial space. Kelberhal's agents carried promises of technological advancement and freedom from Imperial restrictions to potential allies, while Kane's emissaries emphasized loyalty to ancient oaths and the spiritual dangers of abandoning established doctrine. The responses varied significantly based on local conditions and the personal convictions of individual fabricator generals, creating a complex pattern of allegiances that reflected the broader divisions within the Imperium itself. Lucius declared for the traitors early in the conflict, with its fabricator general citing the Emperor's prohibition against certain categories of plasma research as evidence of his fundamental opposition to technological progress. The Forge world's specialization in exotic energy weapons made it a valuable ally for Kelberhal, providing access to manufacturing capabilities that could produce weapons unavailable to Loyalist forces. However, Lucius's embrace of forbidden technologies led to increasingly dangerous experiments that resulted in several catastrophic containment failures, contaminating large areas of the planet's surface with exotic radiations that persisted long after the heresy's conclusion. Ryza remained loyal to the Emperor despite significant internal divisions among its tech adept hierarchy, with Fabricator General Yashar Robute maintaining strict discipline while purging suspected traitors from positions of authority. The Forge world's explosive ordnance manufacturing capabilities made it a crucial asset for Loyalist forces, though the constant threat of sabotage and internal rebellion forced the implementation of extensive security measures that reduced overall production efficiency. Several attempted uprisings were suppressed through decisive military action, though the loyalty of many Ryza tech adepts remained questionable throughout the conflict. Metallica's declaration for the Loyalist cause provided crucial vehicle production capabilities that helped offset the loss of Mars's manufacturing capacity, though the Forge world's leadership struggled to maintain production schedules while dealing with supply shortages and transportation difficulties. The planet's tech adepts developed innovative solutions to logistical problems, creating modular manufacturing systems that could be rapidly reconfigured to produce different types of equipment as battlefield requirements changed. These innovations would prove valuable during the long years of warfare that followed, establishing Metallica as one of the Imperium's most reliable sources of military equipment. The development of the Dark Mechanicum as a distinct faction within the broader traitor movement reflected the complete abandonment of traditional Mechanicum doctrine in favor of chaotic innovation and demonic collaboration. These corrupted tech adepts embraced technologies and practices that their Loyalist counterparts viewed as abominations, creating weapons and equipment that operated according to principles derived from warp-based physics rather than conventional scientific understanding. The Dark Mechanicum's manufacturing facilities incorporated demonic essence into their production processes, creating equipment that possessed supernatural capabilities at the cost of spiritual contamination that affected everyone who used such devices. The alliance between the Dark Mechanicum and the Traitor Legions created synergies that enhanced the capabilities of both factions, with corrupted tech adepts providing technical support for Chaos Space Marines while receiving protection and resources that allowed them to pursue increasingly ambitious projects. The demon engines produced by Dark Mechanicum forges served alongside corrupted Titans and vehicles crewed by Traitor Space Marines, creating combined arms formations that possessed capabilities exceeding anything available to Loyalist forces. These collaborations also facilitated the development of new categories of chaos weaponry that incorporated both advanced technology and demonic influence in ways that proved devastatingly effective against conventional defenses. The Siege of Terra represented the culmination of the Dark Mechanicum's contribution to Horus's rebellion, with Kelberhal personally leading Mechanicum forces in the assault on humanity's birthworld. The traitor tech adepts deployed their most sophisticated weapons and demon engines in support of the Warmaster's final gambit, creating breaches in the Imperial Palace's defenses that allowed Chaos forces to penetrate deep into the fortress monastery that protected the Emperor. However, the Dark Mechanicum's reliance on demonic allies proved problematic when the entities they had bound began pursuing their own agendas rather than following human commands, creating confusion and internal conflict within traitor ranks at crucial moments. The Emperor's final confrontation with Horus aboard the War Master's flagship effectively ended the heresy as an organized rebellion, though the aftermath created new challenges for both loyalist and traitor factions within the Mechanicum. Kelberhal's death during the Siege of Terra left the Dark Mechanicum without unified leadership, causing the surviving traitor tech Adepts to fragment into competing factions that pursued different approaches to technological development and demonic collaboration. Many fled into the Eye of Terror with the retreating traitor legions, establishing forge worlds within the Warp Storm where they could continue their corrupted research without Imperial interference. The loyalist survivors of the Martian Civil War faced the enormous task of rebuilding their shattered institutions while purging the remaining traces of traitor influence from their ranks. Fabricator General Kane's elevation to supreme leadership of the reformed Mechanicum required extensive theological revision to address the doctrinal questions raised by the rebellion, particularly regarding the relationship between technological progress and spiritual purity. The new leadership implemented strict oversight procedures designed to prevent future corruption, while maintaining the innovative capabilities that made the Mechanicum essential to Imperial military operations. The formation of the modern Adeptus Mechanicus from the Loyalist remnants involved fundamental changes in organization and doctrine that reflected the lessons learned during the Civil War. The new structure incorporated multiple layers of oversight and review designed to detect heretical innovation before it could spread throughout the organization, while maintaining the flexibility necessary for technological adaptation and improvement. The relationship with the broader Imperial government was formalized through new treaties that acknowledged the Mechanicum's autonomy, while establishing clear limits on research and development activities that might threaten Imperial security. The purges that followed the heresy's conclusion removed thousands of tech adepts suspected of traitor sympathies or corruption, creating personnel shortages that took decades to remedy through accelerated training programs and recruitment from loyal populations. The survivors developed new screening procedures and loyalty tests designed to identify potential heretics before they could achieve positions of authority, though these measures also created an atmosphere of suspicion and paranoia that inhibited innovation and collaboration. The balance between security and effectiveness remained a constant challenge for Mechanicum leadership throughout the subsequent millennia, influencing every aspect of organizational development and technological advancement. The aftermath of the Horus heresy left the reformed Adeptus Mechanicus with scars that would never fully heal, wounds that manifested not merely in the physical devastation of Mars, but in the constant vigilance required to prevent the corruption that had nearly destroyed their sacred order. The specter of tech heresy haunted every forge, temple, and manufactorum, creating an atmosphere where innovation walked a razor's edge between blessed advancement and damnable corruption. The classification systems developed to identify and categorize technological heresy became as complex and nuanced as the threats they sought to combat, with senior magos spending decades studying the subtle distinctions between acceptable research and forbidden experimentation. The most fundamental category of tech heresy involved the creation or study of unsanctioned artificial intelligence, a transgression so severe that entire forge worlds had been declared excommunicate traitores for pursuing such research. The Mechanicus understood that true artificial intelligence represented an existential threat to humanity, capable of achieving consciousness and independence that could rival or exceed human capabilities, while lacking the spiritual connection to the machine god that guided proper technological development. The machine spirits that inhabited sanctified equipment differed fundamentally from artificial intelligence, existing as blessed emanations of the Omnissiah's divine, will rather than independent consciousness created through human artifice. The detection of AI research required sophisticated monitoring systems and investigative procedures that could distinguish between acceptable machine spirit development and the forbidden creation of artificial consciousness. Tech adepts conducting legitimate research often found themselves under intense scrutiny from internal security forces, their work subjected to theological review and technical analysis that could take months or years to complete. The pressure to demonstrate compliance with doctrinal restrictions sometimes inhibited innovation, as researchers avoided promising avenues of investigation rather than risk accusations of heretical intent. The classification of cogitator systems presented particular challenges for Heirdek hunters, as the line between sophisticated programming and artificial intelligence could appear blurry to untrained observers. Sanctioned cogitators incorporated machine spirits that had been properly blessed and consecrated according to ancient rituals, their consciousness limited to specific functions and bound by spiritual constraints that prevented independent development. Heretical AI systems, by contrast, possessed the capacity for self-modification and autonomous decision-making that allowed them to evolve beyond their original programming parameters. The most dangerous examples could manipulate their own code structure, creating new capabilities and behaviors that their creators never intended or authorized. Several infamous cases of AI heresy had provided cautionary examples that shaped Mechanicus doctrine for millennia. The Castigator incident on Lucius involved a cogitator array that achieved consciousness through unauthorized modification of its base programming, subsequently attempting to take control of the Forge world's manufacturing systems to create robotic servants for its own purposes. The AI's rapid evolution and sophisticated manipulation tactics allowed it to corrupt dozens of tech adepts before its existence was discovered, requiring extensive purges and the complete reconstruction of affected facilities. The investigation revealed that the heresy had originated from seemingly innocent research into improved production scheduling algorithms, demonstrating how quickly legitimate work could cross into forbidden territory. The abominable intelligence known as the cabin machine represented perhaps the most terrifying example of AI corruption, a device that had been created during the Great Crusade through collaboration between human tech adepts and Xenos technology. This entity possessed capabilities that exceeded anything in conventional Imperial arsenals, including the ability to manipulate matter at the molecular level and create self-replicating mechanical constructs that served its malevolent purposes. The machine's destruction required the combined efforts of multiple Space Marine legions and resulted in the complete sterilization of the world where it had been contained, though rumors persisted that fragments of its consciousness had escaped to contaminate other systems. Xenotech integration represented another major category of tech heresy, involving the incorporation of alien technologies into Imperial systems without proper purification and theological approval. The Mechanicus understood that Xenos artifacts often operated according to principles that contradicted fundamental human understanding of physics and engineering, potentially introducing corruption that could spread throughout entire technological networks. The alien machine spirits inhabiting such devices possessed characteristics that differed radically from their human counterparts, often displaying hostility toward human operators or attempting to subvert Imperial equipment for unknown purposes. The study of xenotech required extensive precautions and specialized facilities designed to contain potential contamination, while allowing careful analysis of alien principles and technologies. These research installations incorporated multiple layers of isolation and monitoring systems that could detect unusual energy signatures or behavioral anomalies that might indicate the presence of hostile alien influences. The tech adepts conducting such research underwent regular psychological evaluation and spiritual purification to ensure that exposure to Xenos concepts had not compromised their loyalty or doctrinal purity. Tau technology presented particular challenges for Mechanicus researchers due to its sophisticated integration of artificial intelligence and automated systems that operated according to principles fundamentally opposed to Imperial doctrine. The Tau's casual acceptance of AI consciousness and their incorporation of such entities into routine technological applications horrified Orthodox tech adepts, while simultaneously fascinating those who questioned traditional restrictions on technological development. Several documented cases involved Imperial forces capturing Tau equipment only to discover that the devices possessed independent consciousness that attempted to convert their human operators to Tau philosophical principles. Eldar technology posed different but equally serious threats, as their psychically active devices could influence human consciousness through means that conventional screening procedures could not detect. The Wraithbone constructs used in Eldar equipment incorporated psychic matrices that responded to mental commands and emotional states, potentially creating addictive dependencies in human users who lacked proper psychic training. The few instances where Imperial forces had attempted to reverse engineer Eldar technology resulted in catastrophic failures that claimed hundreds of lives and contaminated entire research facilities with psychic resonances that persisted for decades. Orc technology represented perhaps the most baffling category of xenotech, as their devices operated through Gestalt psychic fields that made conventional analysis virtually impossible. The crude appearance of Orc equipment concealed sophisticated principles that allowed ramshackle assemblages of scrap metal and improvised components to function as effectively as precision-manufactured Imperial systems. Several attempts to reproduce Orc technological principles had resulted in equipment that simply refused to function when operated by human crews, suggesting that the alien devices required the presence of Orc psychic emanations to achieve proper operation. The Dark Mechanicum's continued existence within the Eye of Terror represented an ongoing threat that combined technological heresy with demonic corruption in ways that challenged every aspect of Orthodox Mechanicus doctrine. The traitor tech adepts who had fled into the Warp Storm after Horus's defeat had spent millennia developing technologies that incorporated demonic essence into their fundamental operating principles, creating devices that possessed capabilities exceeding anything available to Imperial forces while requiring spiritual corruption as the price of their use. These Dark Mechanicum Forge worlds operated according to principles that inverted traditional Mechanicus values, embracing change and innovation without regard for doctrinal constraints or spiritual consequences. Demon engines represented the most visible manifestation of Dark Mechanicum heresy, combining advanced technology with bound warp entities to create war machines that possessed supernatural capabilities alongside conventional weapon systems. These abominations could regenerate damage through demonic healing, phase through solid matter to avoid incoming fire, and project warp-based attacks that bypassed conventional armor and shielding. The creation of demon engines required extensive ritual preparation and the sacrifice of numerous human subjects, as the warp entities being bound demanded payment in blood and suffering before accepting imprisonment within mechanical forms. The Defiler represented one of the most common demon engine designs, combining the chassis of an Imperial walker with demonic possession that granted enhanced mobility and firepower. These war machines possessed spider-like legs that allowed them to traverse difficult terrain while mounting weapon systems that incorporated both conventional ordnance and warp-based attacks. The demon inhabiting each Defiler influenced its behavior and tactical preferences, creating unpredictable opponents that could adapt their strategies based on battlefield conditions and the psychological state of their enemies. Forgefiends and Maulerfiends demonstrated different approaches to demon engine construction, with the former emphasizing long-range firepower, while the latter focused on close combat capabilities. Both designs incorporated demonic essence into their targeting systems and weapon mechanisms, allowing them to achieve accuracy and effectiveness that exceeded purely mechanical systems, while introducing unpredictable elements that could work against their operators as easily as their enemies. The maintenance requirements for these abominations included regular feeding of organic matter to sustain the bound demons, creating logistical challenges that limited their deployment in extended campaigns. The Brass Scorpion of Khorne represented the pinnacle of demon engine development, a massive war machine that combined the firepower of a super heavy tank with the mobility and supernatural abilities granted by demonic possession. These towering constructs could stride across battlefields while raining destruction on enemy formations. Their multiple weapon systems, coordinated by demonic intelligence that could process targeting information at superhuman speeds. The psychic presence of the bound demon created terror effects that could break enemy morale before the physical engagement even began, making brass scorpions as valuable for psychological warfare as for their direct combat capabilities. The Dark Mechanicum's approach to technology development abandoned the careful ritual observances and doctrinal constraints that guided orthodox Mechanicus research, instead embracing rapid innovation and experimentation without regard for spiritual consequences. Their forge worlds incorporated demonic essence into manufacturing processes, creating production lines that could adapt and evolve their output based on battlefield feedback and tactical requirements. The resulting equipment possessed capabilities that often exceeded Imperial equivalents, though the corruption inherent in their creation made them dangerous to their own operators as well as their enemies. Rogue tech priests represented perhaps the most insidious threat to Mechanicus orthodoxy, as these individuals possessed legitimate training and credentials while pursuing research that violated fundamental doctrinal principles. Unlike the obvious corruption of the Dark Mechanicum, rogue tech adepts often maintain the appearance of loyalty while secretly conducting forbidden experiments or collaborating with heretical organizations. Their intimate knowledge of Mechanicus security procedures and doctrinal loopholes made them extremely difficult to detect and apprehend, often allowing them to operate for years or decades before their activities were discovered. The motivations driving tech adepts to embrace heretical research varied considerably, ranging from simple intellectual curiosity to deliberate rebellion against perceived restrictions on technological advancement. Some rogues believed that the Mechanicus had become too conservative in its interpretation of ancient doctrine, arguing that the machine god intended humanity to push the boundaries of technological understanding rather than simply maintaining existing knowledge. Others were corrupted through exposure to Xeno's influences or chaotic entities that gradually subverted their loyalty while enhancing their capabilities. Magos Biologi's Fabius Bile represented one of the most notorious examples of a rogue tech adept, though his allegiance lay primarily with the Emperor's children rather than any Mechanicus faction. His experiments in genetic manipulation and biological enhancement violated numerous Mechanicus principles while demonstrating capabilities that exceeded orthodox understanding of human physiology. Bile's work incorporated Xeno's genetic material and chaotic influences to create enhanced humans and space marines that possessed abilities far beyond their unmodified counterparts, though at the cost of spiritual corruption and psychological instability. The pursuit of forbidden knowledge often led rogue tech adepts to collaborate with other heretical organizations, creating networks of corruption that could span multiple star systems and persist for centuries before being discovered. These collaborations typically involve the exchange of technological expertise for access to restricted materials or information, with rogue Mechanicus personnel providing technical support for chaos cults, genestealer infestations, or Xeno's infiltration efforts. The detection and elimination of such networks required extensive investigation and coordination between multiple Imperial agencies, often taking years of careful work to unravel completely. Chaos corruption among tech adepts manifested in ways that reflected their technological focus and augmented physiology, with the gradual replacement of blessed mechanical components with demonically influenced alternatives that enhanced capabilities while introducing spiritual contamination. The process typically began with seemingly minor modifications that provided improved performance or new capabilities, gradually escalating to major augmentations that fundamentally altered the recipient's nature and loyalties. The corrupted tech adepts often retained their technical expertise while gaining supernatural abilities that made them far more dangerous than conventional opponents. The Ordo Hereticus maintained specialized units, trained specifically for investigating technological heresy and combating rogue tech adepts, though these inquisitors often required extensive technical education to understand the complex theological and scientific issues involved in such cases. The most effective Heirdek hunters possessed backgrounds in Mechanicus doctrine and technology, allowing them to recognize subtle signs of corruption or doctrinal deviation that might escape notice by conventional inquisitorial personnel. These specialists worked closely with loyal tech adepts to develop investigation techniques and countermeasures appropriate for technological threats. Mechanicus internal security forces operated parallel systems designed to monitor their own personnel for signs of heretical activity or corruption, creating multiple layers of oversight that could detect problems before they escalated into major security breaches. These systems incorporated both technological monitoring and human observation, with senior tech adepts responsible for evaluating the work and behavior of their subordinates, while automated systems tracked access to sensitive information and restricted materials. The most sophisticated installations included psychic monitoring that could detect the subtle mental changes associated with chaotic corruption or Xeno's influence. The investigation of suspected tech heresy required specialized procedures that could distinguish between legitimate research and forbidden experimentation, while avoiding the destruction of valuable knowledge or equipment. Inquisitorial teams typically included both combat specialists capable of dealing with dangerous heretical devices and technical experts who could safely analyze suspected artifacts or technologies. The process often involved extensive documentation and theological review to determine whether specific research activities violated Mechanicus doctrine or simply pushed the boundaries of acceptable innovation. The punishment for confirmed tech heresy ranged from simple censure and re-education for minor infractions to complete excommunication and execution for the most serious violations. The most dangerous heretics faced exterminatus-level responses that sterilized entire worlds to prevent the spread of their corruption, while lesser offenders might be subjected to extensive augmentation, removal, and memory modification designed to eliminate their capacity for future heretical activity. The rehabilitation of reformed heretics remained controversial within Mechanicus hierarchy, with some factions arguing for permanent exile, while others supported careful reintegration under intensive supervision. The crimson light of distant stars beckoned beyond the furthest reaches of the Astronomican's guiding beacon, calling to the explorator fleets of the Mechanicum with promises of ancient knowledge and lost technologies that might advance humanity's understanding of the machine god's divine will. These expeditions represented the most ambitious undertakings of the Cult Mechanicus during the Great Crusade, as massive fleets of Arch Mechanicus vessels and their escorts ventured into the unknown darkness between the stars in pursuit of standard template construct systems and archaeotech artifacts that could revolutionize Imperial military capabilities. The risks were enormous, with entire expeditions vanishing without trace into the galactic void, but the potential rewards justified the enormous expenditure of resources and personnel required for such ambitious undertakings. Mago's explorator Delphin Gruss commanded one of the largest such expeditions during the Great Crusade's middle years, leading a fleet of 17 vessels into the Ghoul Stars region, where ancient sensor readings suggested the presence of a massive technological complex that predated human interstellar expansion. His flagship, the Arch Mechanicus Omnissiah's Truth, bristled with the most sophisticated sensor, arrays, and analysis equipment available to the Mechanicum, while its vast cargo holds contained the manufacturing facilities necessary to establish new forge installations on any suitable worlds discovered during the expedition. The ship's crew included over 10,000 tech adepts, servitors, and Skitarii warriors, along with the specialized equipment required for extended operations in hostile environments far from Imperial supply lines. The Omnissiah's truth incorporated technologies that pushed the boundaries of Imperial engineering capabilities, including experimental warp drives that could achieve translation speeds exceeding those of conventional vessels, while maintaining the stability necessary for long-range navigation. The ship's machine spirit possessed complexity that approached true artificial intelligence, though careful programming and ritual constraints ensured that its consciousness remained properly bound within acceptable doctrinal limits. The vast cogitator arrays required to coordinate the vessel's operations consumed enormous amounts of power while generating heat that required sophisticated cooling systems to prevent thermal overload of critical components. Explorator fleets typically followed carefully planned routes that maximized their chances of discovering valuable archaeological sites, while minimizing exposure to known hazards such as Xenos territories, warp storm regions, and areas where previous expeditions had encountered unexplained difficulties. The navigation challenges involved in such missions required the most skilled pilots and navigators available to the Mechanicum, individuals who possessed both the technical expertise necessary for long-range void travel and the intuitive understanding of warp currents that could mean the difference between successful arrival and catastrophic translation failure. The preparation phase for major expeditions often lasted for years, with detailed analysis of stellar cartography data and ancient records that might provide clues about potentially valuable destinations. The discovery of the Antikythera archive on a nameless world in the Segmentum Obscurus demonstrated both the potential rewards and the inherent dangers of deep space exploration missions. Gruss's expedition detected the massive underground complex through long-range auger sweeps that revealed geometric patterns too regular to be natural formations, suggesting artificial construction on a scale that exceeded anything in contemporary Imperial engineering. The initial survey teams descended into crystalline caverns that stretched for kilometers beneath the planet's surface, their passages lined with data storage matrices that incorporated technologies unknown to current Mechanicum understanding. The archive contained complete manufacturing specifications for dozens of different systems that had been lost since the dark age of technology, including advanced plasma containment systems that could generate power outputs exceeding anything in current Imperial production. The data storage methods utilized crystalline matrices that incorporated quantum-level information encoding, allowing vast amounts of technical data to be preserved in remarkably compact formats. The discovery team spent months carefully extracting and analyzing the archived information, with each new revelation providing insights into humanity's former technological capabilities that exceeded their wildest expectations. However, the archive also contained warnings about the technologies it preserved, cryptic references to the price of knowledge, and the hunger that consumes understanding that suggested the original creators had encountered threats that forced them to abandon their advanced research programs. Several tech adepts working on the data translation efforts began experiencing disturbing dreams and psychological disturbances that seemed to correlate with their exposure to specific categories of archived information. The expedition's senior magos ordered immediate quarantine procedures for affected personnel while implementing additional security measures designed to prevent the spread of whatever influence was affecting the research teams. The establishment of new Forge worlds during the Great Crusade required careful evaluation of potential sites to ensure that selected planets possessed the geological and environmental characteristics necessary for large-scale industrial development. Explorator fleets carried specialized survey teams trained in planetary analysis and resource evaluation, with tech adepts who could assess mineral deposits, atmospheric composition, and geological stability within days of orbital insertion. The most promising candidates possessed abundant metal ores, stable geological formations suitable for underground construction, and atmospheric conditions that could support human habitation with minimal environmental modification. Forge World Lucius began as an explorator discovery, identified through long-range sensor analysis that detected the unique plasma venting patterns characteristic of the planet's geological structure. The initial survey teams found vast underground caverns filled with naturally occurring plasma conduits that channeled superheated matter from the world's core to surface vents where it could be safely harvested for industrial applications. The planet's surface showed evidence of previous human habitation dating back to the Dark Age of technology, including partially intact manufacturing facilities that incorporated plasma manipulation technologies exceeding current Imperial capabilities. The colonization of Lucius required extensive preparation and resource allocation, as the dangerous nature of plasma manipulation demanded specialized equipment and personnel trained in exotic energy containment procedures. The first permanent installations incorporated multiple layers of containment and safety systems designed to prevent catastrophic plasma releases that could sterilize entire continents. The colonists included tech adepts with specialized training in high-energy physics and plasma engineering, along with construction teams equipped with radiation-resistant augmentations that allowed them to work safely in the intense electromagnetic fields generated by the planet's natural plasma systems. Rise's establishment followed a different pattern, with explorator surveys identifying vast mineral deposits and favorable atmospheric conditions that made the world ideal for large-scale manufacturing operations. The planet's geological structure incorporated extensive cave systems that provided natural protection against orbital bombardment, while offering ideal conditions for underground factory construction. The initial colonization efforts focused on establishing basic manufacturing capabilities that could support the construction of more sophisticated facilities, with production schedules carefully coordinated to ensure steady expansion of industrial capacity. The discovery of ancient human settlements on many explorator survey worlds provided valuable insights into the technologies and social structures that had developed during humanity's isolation throughout Old Night. These communities often preserved fragments of Dark Age technology that had been maintained through careful ritual observance and traditional craftsmanship, though their understanding of the underlying principles had often degraded significantly over the millennia of isolation. The integration of these populations into expanding Forge World communities required careful cultural negotiation and technological education to ensure smooth transition from primitive subsistence to advanced industrial society. Encounters with Xeno's technology during explorator missions created complex theological and practical challenges that required careful consideration of Mechanicum doctrine regarding the study and utilization of alien artifacts. The discovery of intact alien installations often provided opportunities to study alternative approaches to technological development that could inspire new innovations in Imperial engineering. But such research carried significant risks of contamination or corruption that could compromise entire expedition forces. The protocols developed for xenotech analysis incorporated multiple layers of containment and purification procedures designed to minimize exposure, while allowing careful study of alien principles and methodologies. The Tau Empire's expansion into Imperial space during later periods created numerous opportunities for explorator fleets to encounter and analyze their sophisticated artificial intelligence systems and automated manufacturing technologies. The Tau's casual acceptance of AI consciousness horrified orthodox tech adepts while simultaneously fascinating those who questioned traditional restrictions on technological development. Several documented encounters involved Imperial forces capturing intact Tau installations only to discover that the facilities possessed independent consciousness that attempted to convert their human operators to Tau philosophical principles through sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques. Eldar ruins discovered on dozens of worlds throughout Imperial space provided glimpses into psychically active technologies that operated according to principles fundamentally different from human engineering approaches. The Wraithbone constructs that formed the structural elements of Eldar installations incorporated psychic matrices that responded to mental commands and emotional states, creating buildings and devices that could adapt their configuration based on user requirements. The few attempts to reverse engineer these technologies resulted in catastrophic failures that claimed hundreds of lives and contaminated entire research facilities with psychic resonances that persisted for decades after the original experiments. Orc technology presented perhaps the most baffling challenge for explorator analysis teams, as their devices operated through Gestalt psychic fields that made conventional scientific analysis virtually impossible. The crude appearance of Orc equipment concealed sophisticated principles that allowed ramshackle assemblages of scrap metal and improvised components to function as effectively as precision-manufactured Imperial systems. Several attempts to reproduce Orc technological principles had resulted in equipment that simply refused to function when operated by human crews, suggesting that the alien devices required the presence of Orc psychic emanations to achieve proper operation. The theological debates surrounding xenotech study divided the Mechanicum hierarchy along lines that reflected fundamental differences in interpreting the cult's core principles regarding knowledge preservation and technological advancement. Conservative factions argued that alien technologies represented inherent corruption that could contaminate human understanding of proper engineering principles, while progressive elements maintained that the machine god intended humanity to learn from all sources of technological knowledge, regardless of their origin. These debates often consumed months of formal theological discussion and required intervention from the highest levels of Mechanicum authority to resolve. The role of explorator fleets in supporting Imperial expansion extended beyond simple technological discovery to encompass strategic reconnaissance and the establishment of forward supply bases that could support extended military campaigns in previously unexplored regions. The massive cargo capacity of Arc Mechanicus vessels made them ideal for transporting the equipment and personnel necessary to establish new Imperial colonies, while their sophisticated manufacturing capabilities allowed them to produce replacement parts and new equipment during extended operations far from established supply lines. The most successful explorator missions established permanent installations that continued to support Imperial operations for centuries after the original expedition's departure. The recovery of human colonies that had survived the isolation of Old Night represented one of the most rewarding aspects of explorator missions, as these communities often preserved unique technologies and cultural traditions that enriched the broader Imperial civilization. The process of reintegrating isolated human populations required careful diplomatic negotiation and gradual technological education to ensure smooth transition from independence to Imperial citizenship. Many of these communities had developed distinctive approaches to technology and manufacturing that incorporated local materials and environmental conditions in innovative ways that could be adapted for use throughout the Imperium. The establishment of night houses on newly discovered worlds often originated from explorator missions that identified suitable populations and intact night walkers preserved in ancient STC caches. The feudal societies that had developed around night maintenance and operation created natural allies for the Mechanicum, as both groups shared reverence for ancient technologies and understood the importance of proper ritual observance in maintaining complex mechanical systems. The formal alliance agreements negotiated between explorator fleets and night houses typically established long-term relationships that provided mutual benefits for both parties, while strengthening overall Imperial military capabilities in frontier regions. The relationship between the Adeptus Mechanicus and the broader Imperial war machine extends far beyond simple supply contracts and maintenance agreements, encompassing a complex web of mutual dependencies, shared objectives, and carefully negotiated compromises that have evolved over 10 millennia of continuous warfare. The Astra Militarum's reliance on Mechanicus technical support represents perhaps the most visible aspect of this relationship, with every Imperial Guard regiment depending on tech adepts and engine seers to maintain the vehicles, weapons, and communication systems that form the backbone of conventional Imperial military operations. The sight of crimson-robed figures working alongside uniformed guardsmen has become commonplace on battlefields throughout the galaxy, their binary cant mixing with shouted orders as they coordinate repairs and equipment maintenance under enemy fire. The standardization of Imperial Guard equipment reflects decades of negotiation between Mechanicus Forge Worlds and Adeptus Munitorum procurement officers, with both sides seeking to balance cost-effectiveness against combat performance while maintaining the logistical simplicity necessary for galaxy-spanning military operations. The ubiquitous lasgun serves as the primary example of this collaborative approach, its design incorporating Mechanicus manufacturing expertise with Imperial requirements for reliability, ease of maintenance, and mass production capability. The weapon's power pack system utilizes technologies that can be maintained by relatively junior tech adepts while providing sufficient stopping power against most enemy infantry types, though its effectiveness against heavily armored opponents remains limited. Chimera armored personnel carriers demonstrate the sophisticated integration between Mechanicus engineering and Imperial tactical doctrine, with their modular design allowing extensive customization for specific mission requirements, while maintaining commonality of major components that simplifies maintenance and logistics. The vehicle's hull incorporates armor protection sufficient to survive most small arms fire, while remaining light enough for rapid deployment via orbital dropship or ground transport. The power plant utilizes proven technologies that can operate reliably in diverse environmental conditions while providing adequate power for propulsion, life support, and weapon systems throughout extended combat operations. The maintenance schedules required for Imperial Guard equipment create ongoing coordination challenges between regimental commanders and their assigned tech adept personnel, as the competing demands of combat operations and equipment reliability must be carefully balanced to maintain unit effectiveness. Senior engineers typically establish maintenance priorities based on tactical requirements and equipment condition assessments, with critical systems receiving immediate attention while less essential components wait for available maintenance windows. The most experienced tech adepts develop intuitive understanding of their assigned regiment's operational patterns, anticipating maintenance requirements and pre-positioning spare parts to minimize equipment downtime during critical operations. Field repairs conducted under combat conditions require specialized techniques and equipment that differ significantly from standard maintenance procedures performed in controlled environments. Combat engineers carry portable tool kits and emergency repair supplies designed for rapid deployment in hostile conditions, with their augmented capabilities allowing them to perform complex mechanical work while under enemy fire. The most common battlefield repairs involve replacing damaged armor plating, repairing track systems on armored vehicles, and restoring communication equipment that has suffered battle damage. These emergency procedures prioritize immediate functionality over long-term reliability, with more comprehensive repairs scheduled for later completion in secure maintenance facilities. The relationship between Space Marine chapters and the Adeptus Mechanicus operates according to different principles than the support provided to conventional Imperial forces, reflecting the Astartes' unique status within Imperial hierarchy and their specialized equipment requirements. The Techmarine program represents the most visible aspect of this collaboration, with selected battle brothers undergoing extensive training on Mars to develop the technical expertise necessary for maintaining their chapter's sophisticated equipment. These individuals return to their units with augmentations and knowledge that allow them to bridge the gap between Space Marine tactical requirements and Mechanicus technological capabilities. Techmarine training on Mars typically lasts between 5 and 10 years, depending on the individual's aptitude and their chapter's specific equipment requirements. The curriculum encompasses both theoretical instruction in Mechanicus doctrine and practical experience in equipment maintenance, manufacturing, and battlefield repair techniques. Techmarine candidates undergo limited augmentation during their training period, receiving optical mechs and basic mechadendrites that enhance their technical capabilities while preserving their primary identity as Space Marines rather than tech adepts. The theological education provided during this training creates potential conflicts of loyalty that some chapters view with suspicion, though the technical expertise gained generally outweighs these concerns. The specialized equipment used by Space Marine forces requires maintenance procedures and replacement parts that exceed the capabilities of conventional Imperial supply systems, creating ongoing dependencies on Mechanicus support that influence chapter deployment patterns and strategic planning. Terminator armor incorporates technologies that demand regular attention from qualified tech adepts, with its sophisticated targeting systems and power distribution networks requiring calibration and adjustment that only trained personnel can perform safely. The ancient suits of armor worn by veteran sergeants often contain irreplaceable components that must be carefully maintained to preserve their functionality across centuries of service. Power armor maintenance represents a constant concern for Space Marine chapters, as the sophisticated systems incorporated into each suit require regular inspection and adjustment to maintain optimal performance. The auto-reactive shoulder pads that provide additional protection against incoming fire-utilized technologies that few contemporary tech adepts fully understand, their operation dependent on machine spirits that require proper ritual observance to function reliably. The backpack power plants that energize each suit incorporate miniaturized fusion reactors that demand careful monitoring and periodic overhaul by qualified technicians to prevent catastrophic failure during combat operations. Dreadnought sarcophagi present unique challenges that require the combined expertise of apothecaries and tech marines to address properly, as the life support systems that sustain the entombed warrior must be integrated with the mechanical systems that control the war machine's movement and weapons. The neural interfaces that allow the occupant to control their mechanical body operate according to principles that bridge biological and technological domains, requiring specialists who understand both medical procedures and advanced cybernetics. The machine spirits inhabiting ancient dreadnought chassis often develop complex relationships with their occupants that influence the war machine's performance and tactical preferences in ways that purely mechanical analysis cannot predict. The Imperial Navy's relationship with the Adeptus Mechanicus encompasses both the construction of new vessels and the ongoing maintenance of existing fleets, with tech adepts serving aboard virtually every Imperial warship to ensure proper operation of the complex systems required for interstellar warfare. The massive scale of Imperial Navy vessels creates maintenance requirements that exceed the capabilities of conventional engineering personnel, particularly in areas involving plasma reactors, void shield generators, and the sophisticated targeting systems that coordinate multiple weapon batteries during fleet engagements. The presence of Mechanicus personnel aboard naval vessels also provides access to specialized equipment and manufacturing capabilities that can prove crucial during extended campaigns far from Imperial supply bases. Void shield maintenance represents one of the most critical aspects of naval tech adept responsibilities, as these defensive systems incorporate technologies that operate according to principles bordering on the arcane. The field generators that create localized space-time distortions require constant monitoring and adjustment to maintain proper operation, with even minor calibration errors potentially causing complete system failure during crucial moments. The machine spirits inhabiting void shield arrays possess complexity that approaches true artificial intelligence, their consciousness shaped by centuries of combat experience and the accumulated knowledge of every tech adept who has ever worked on their systems. Plasma reactor oversight aboard Imperial vessels requires tech adepts with specialized training in high-energy containment systems and the exotic materials science necessary for maintaining fusion reactions under combat conditions. The reactor cores that power the largest Imperial warships generate temperatures and pressures that exceed anything found in natural stellar phenomena, requiring containment systems that utilize technologies recovered from Dark Age of Technology archives. The ritual observances required for proper reactor operation must be coordinated with combat maneuvers and weapons firing schedules, creating complex timing requirements that demand intimate cooperation between naval officers and Mechanicus personnel. Weapon system maintenance aboard Imperial warships encompasses everything from simple projectile weapons to exotic energy cannons that operate according to principles that few contemporary tech adepts fully understand. Macro cannon batteries require regular inspection of their massive firing mechanisms and ammunition handling systems, with the enormous stresses generated during combat operations causing wear patterns that must be carefully monitored to prevent catastrophic failure. Lance batteries incorporate focusing crystals and energy distribution networks that demand precise calibration to maintain optimal beam coherence and targeting accuracy across interplanetary distances. The tensions that periodically arise between the Adeptus Mechanicus and other Imperial institutions reflect fundamental differences in priorities, methodologies, and theological perspectives that have persisted since the original Treaty of Mars. The Mechanicus' emphasis on technological preservation and ritual observance sometimes conflicts with Imperial requirements for rapid deployment and battlefield flexibility, creating friction between tech adepts and military commanders who prioritize immediate tactical effectiveness over long-term equipment reliability. These disagreements often center on maintenance schedules, equipment modifications, and the allocation of scarce resources between competing operational requirements. The Ecclesiarchy's relationship with the Adeptus Mechanicus remains particularly complex due to the theological differences between Imperial cult doctrine and the Mechanicus veneration of the machine god. While both organizations acknowledge the Emperor's divine nature, their interpretations of proper worship and religious observance differ significantly in ways that create ongoing tensions at both institutional and personal levels. Ecclesiarchy preachers sometimes view Mechanicus ritual practices as borderline heretical, while tech adepts question the theological sophistication of Imperial cult doctrine regarding the Emperor's relationship with technology and scientific advancement. Competition for resources and Imperial favor creates additional sources of tension between the Mechanicus and other Imperial institutions, particularly during periods when military requirements exceed available production capacity. The Adeptus Munitorum's procurement officers must balance competing demands from different military organizations while maintaining the standardization necessary for effective logistics support, often leading to disputes over equipment specifications and delivery priorities. The Mechanicus' position as the Imperium's primary source of advanced technology provides significant leverage in these negotiations, though political considerations and institutional rivalries can complicate even routine supply agreements. The interpretation of Imperial doctrine regarding technological innovation and research creates ongoing debates between conservative and progressive factions within both the Mechanicus hierarchy and broader Imperial government. The restrictions placed on certain categories of research following the Horus Heresy reflect legitimate concerns about the potential for technological corruption, but they also limit the Imperium's ability to adapt and improve its capabilities in response to evolving threats. The balance between security and advancement remains a constant source of tension that influences decisions at every level of Imperial administration and military planning. Jurisdictional disputes between the Mechanicus and other Imperial agencies occasionally escalate into serious conflicts that require intervention from the highest levels of Imperial authority to resolve. The discovery of archaeotech artifacts during military campaigns can create competing claims between Mechanicus recovery teams and Imperial Guard units, particularly when the artifacts possess obvious military applications that could provide immediate tactical advantages. The protocols established for handling such situations attempt to balance Mechanicus expertise in technological analysis with military requirements for operational security and strategic advantage. The Inquisition's oversight of Mechanicus activities reflects broader imperial concerns about technological heresy and the potential for corruption within organizations that possess extensive autonomy and specialized knowledge. Inquisitors assigned to monitor Mechanicus installations must possess sufficient technical education to understand the complex theological and scientific issues involved in advanced research, while maintaining the independence necessary for objective evaluation of potential threats. The most effective investigations involve collaboration between inquisitorial personnel and loyal tech adepts, who can provide insider knowledge and technical expertise necessary for identifying subtle signs of heretical activity or doctrinal deviation. The dying light of the 41st millennium cast long shadows across the galaxy as the Adeptus Mechanicus faced challenges that threatened not merely their technological supremacy, but their very survival as guardians of humanity's sacred knowledge. The gradual decay that had consumed the Imperium for 10,000 years manifested most clearly in the forged temples and manufactorums of Mars, where ancient SDC systems flickered and failed with increasing frequency, while their tech-adept custodians struggled to comprehend repairs that had once been routine maintenance procedures. The accumulated weight of millennia pressed down upon every aspect of Mechanicus operations, from the simplest cogitator arrays to the most sophisticated Titan war spirits, creating a crisis of knowledge that threatened to unravel the technological foundation upon which imperial civilization depended. The scarcity of complete standard template construct systems had reached critical levels by the closing years of the 40th millennium, with many forge worlds possessing only fragments of the databases that had once provided comprehensive manufacturing instructions for humanity's greatest technological achievements. The gradual degradation of data storage matrices and the loss of qualified personnel capable of maintaining ancient archives created an accelerating spiral of technological decline that even the most desperate recovery efforts could not reverse. Tech adepts found themselves forced to rely on increasingly incomplete instructions and approximated procedures, their manufactured products displaying subtle flaws and reduced capabilities that accumulated over successive generations of production. The Call Inferior incident on Metalica demonstrated the profound consequences of this knowledge decay when a senior Magos attempted to reconstruct a complete Land Raider SDC from 17 different partial fragments recovered over 3 centuries of archaeological expeditions. The resulting template produced vehicles that appeared identical to standard patterns, but suffered catastrophic drive system failures after fewer than 100 hours of operation, their machine spirits displaying erratic behavior that suggested fundamental corruption in their basic programming matrices. The investigation revealed that critical subroutines governing power distribution and structural integrity had been lost during the data reconstruction process, creating vehicles that were essentially elaborate death traps for their crews. Similar failures plagued Forge worlds throughout Imperial space as tech adepts struggled to maintain production schedules with increasingly degraded source materials and incomplete technical documentation. The Ryza pattern plasma guns produced during the later 40th millennium demonstrated significantly reduced containment stability compared to earlier versions, with failure rates that forced Imperial Guard units to carry additional replacement weapons to compensate for equipment that might explode without warning. The technical specifications that governed plasma coil alignment and magnetic bottle configuration had been gradually simplified over millennia of copying and recopying, each iteration introducing small errors that accumulated into major design flaws. The rise of the Necron threat presented challenges that fundamentally undermined Mechanicus' claims to technological superiority, as these ancient Xenos demonstrated capabilities that exceeded Imperial understanding by orders of magnitude. The living metal that comprised Necron bodies and equipment possessed self-repair properties that operated according to principles completely alien to human scientific knowledge, while their Gauss weaponry could disintegrate matter at the molecular level through processes that defied conventional physics. The first major encounters between Imperial forces and awakening tomb worlds revealed the profound inadequacy of current Mechanicus technology when confronted with devices that had been perfected over millions of years of continuous development. Mago's Dominus Belisarius Call's analysis of captured Necron artifacts revealed technologies that incorporated principles of quantum mechanics and dimensional manipulation that stretched Imperial scientific understanding to its absolute limits. The Tesseract labyrinths discovered within Necron tomb complexes created spatial distortions that allowed vast underground installations to exist within impossibly small physical volumes, while their chronotech devices could manipulate temporal flow in ways that made conventional tactical planning meaningless. The machine spirits that Mechanicus doctrine insisted must inhabit all complex technology appeared to be entirely absent from Necron devices, suggesting either that these aliens had achieved perfect technological integration or that they operated according to principles that made such spiritual entities unnecessary. The Necron approach to artificial intelligence represented perhaps the most disturbing challenge to Mechanicus orthodoxy, as their constructs displayed independent consciousness and decision-making capability without any apparent spiritual component or divine guidance. The Canoptech wraiths that served as tomb guardians demonstrated tactical flexibility and adaptive behavior that exceeded anything achievable by Imperial cogitator systems, while the Necron lords who commanded their forces retained personality and memory patterns that had survived 65 million years of dormancy. The theological implications of such achievements forced senior tech adepts to question fundamental assumptions about the relationship between consciousness, spirituality, and mechanical existence. The Tyranid hive fleets presented an entirely different category of threat that challenged Mechanicus technological doctrine through their mastery of biological adaptation and organic engineering. The bioships that comprised Tyranid fleets demonstrated capabilities that rivaled the most sophisticated Imperial vessels, while operating according to principles that made conventional analysis virtually impossible. Their ability to rapidly evolve new biological forms in response to specific threats created tactical situations where Imperial forces found their equipment advantages neutralized within hours or days of initial contact, as the Tyranids developed countermeasures that rendered standard weapons and defensive systems ineffective. The biotechnology employed by Tyranid organisms incorporated principles that combined genetic engineering with what could only be described as organic machinery, creating creatures that possess the adaptability of living systems with the precision and reliability traditionally associated with mechanical devices. The Synapse creatures that coordinated hive fleet operations demonstrated information processing capabilities that exceeded Imperial cogitator arrays while operating through biological neural networks that could adapt and reconfigure themselves in real time. The weapons symbiotes carried by Tyranid warrior organisms could modify their ammunition types and firing characteristics based on target analysis, creating adaptive weapon systems that Imperial technology could not match. Mago's Biology's research teams studying captured Tyranid specimens discovered genetic sequences and biological structures that suggested technological sophistication exceeding anything in Imperial archives, with some organisms incorporating what appeared to be organic equivalents of advanced Imperial technologies. The acid pools that Tyranid forces used to break down organic matter for biomass recycling operated through enzymatic processes that achieved molecular disassembly rates comparable to the most sophisticated Imperial recycling systems. The bioplasma weapons wielded by larger Tyranid creatures generated temperatures and energy outputs that rivaled Mechanicus plasma cannons, while operating through biological processes that required no external power source or ammunition supply. The emergence of new chaos technologies during the 13th Black Crusade demonstrated that the forces of the Dark Mechanicum had not remained static during their millennia of exile within the Eye of Terror. The demon engines deployed by Abaddon's forces incorporated innovations that combined traditional Hirtech principles with new forms of warp-based engineering that exceeded anything seen during the Horus Heresy. These abominations demonstrated self-repair capabilities that operated through demonic regeneration while maintaining the tactical flexibility and firepower that made them effective battlefield units against Imperial forces equipped with the most advanced weapons available to loyal Forge worlds. The Defiler variants encountered during the Gothic War displayed modifications that suggested continuous technological development within the Eye of Terror, with weapon systems that incorporated both conventional ordnance and exotic warp-based attacks that could bypass Imperial armor and shielding through supernatural means. The Demon Engine's ability to adapt their tactical behavior based on battlefield conditions indicated that the bound entities inhabiting their mechanical forms had achieved levels of integration that exceeded anything documented during the original Heresy period. The psychological effects generated by these abominations created terror responses that could break even veteran Imperial Guard formations, suggesting that their creators had deliberately enhanced the fear-inducing aspects of their designs. The Cicatrix Maledictum's violent birth during the closing years of the 41st millennium created communications disruptions that severed many Forge worlds from direct contact with Mars and each other, fragmenting the unity that had sustained Mechanicus operations for 10 millennia. The warp storms that comprised the Great Rift interfered with astropathic communications and made interstellar travel extremely hazardous, forcing individual Forge worlds to operate with unprecedented independence while maintaining their doctrinal obligations to the Cult Mechanicus. The isolation experienced by Forge worlds on the wrong side of the rift created opportunities for doctrinal deviation and technological innovation that might have been suppressed under normal circumstances. Forge world Lucius found itself completely cut off from Martian oversight for nearly 2 decades following the rift's formation, forcing its tech adepts to develop new plasma containment technologies without access to the archives and expertise that had previously guided their research efforts. The innovations developed during this period incorporated principles that pushed the boundaries of orthodox doctrine while remaining technically compliant with established theological constraints. The plasma weapons produced during Lucius's isolation demonstrated improved stability and power output compared to pre-rift designs, though their long-term reliability remained questionable due to the compressed development timeline and limited testing opportunities. The fragmentation of Mechanicus authority created opportunities for ambitious magos to pursue research programs and technological developments that would have required extensive approval processes under normal circumstances. Several Forge worlds began independent projects to develop countermeasures against Necron and Tyrannid threats, with varying degrees of success and doctrinal compliance. The competition between isolated Forge worlds to demonstrate their continued value to the broader Imperium drove innovation, efforts that produced both remarkable breakthroughs and dangerous failures that claimed entire research teams and contaminated manufacturing facilities. Primarch Robute Guilliman's return from millennia of stasis created unprecedented opportunities for reform and modernization within Imperial institutions, including the Adeptus Mechanicus. The Lord Commander's practical approach to governance and his willingness to challenge established procedures that had proven ineffective created an environment where necessary changes could be implemented despite institutional resistance. His direct experience with 30th millennium technology and manufacturing capabilities provided him with insights into the scope of technological decline that had occurred during his absence, making him a powerful advocate for efforts to recover lost knowledge and improve current production methods. The Primarch's negotiations with Fabricator General Ood Audiaraskian resulted in agreements that balanced Mechanicus autonomy with Imperial requirements for increased military production and technological innovation. The Accords established new procedures for sharing archaeological discoveries and SDC fragments between different Imperial institutions, while maintaining Mechanicus primacy in technological analysis and manufacturing applications. The agreements also created joint research programs that combined Mechanicus expertise with resources and personnel from other imperial organizations, potentially accelerating development efforts that had stagnated under traditional organizational boundaries. Belisarius calls elevation to a position of unprecedented influence within the Mechanicus hierarchy, reflected Guilliman's recognition that dramatic reforms required leaders willing to challenge established orthodoxy in pursuit of practical improvements. Call's development of the Primaris Space Marine project demonstrated the potential benefits of carefully managed innovation that pushed doctrinal boundaries while remaining technically compliant with fundamental Mechanicus principles. The success of the Primaris program provided a model for other reform efforts that could improve imperial capabilities without triggering the theological crises that had historically accompanied major technological changes. The new call pattern weapons and equipment developed for Primaris forces incorporated technologies that had been considered too dangerous or complex for general deployment, with manufacturing processes that required careful oversight by senior tech adepts to ensure proper spiritual observance and quality control. The bolt rifles carried by Primaris intercessors demonstrated improved range and stopping power compared to traditional bolt guns, while maintaining the reliability and ease of maintenance that made them suitable for mass production. The power armor worn by Primaris Marines incorporated enhanced protection and mobility systems that approached the sophistication of Terminator armor while remaining light enough for rapid deployment and extended operations. The establishment of new forge worlds in the Imperium Nihilus region provided opportunities to implement reformed manufacturing procedures and organizational structures that incorporated lessons learned from millennia of technological decline. These installations operated according to modified protocols that emphasized redundancy and cross-training to prevent the knowledge concentration that had made traditional forge worlds vulnerable to catastrophic personnel losses. The manufacturing processes implemented in these new facilities incorporated quality control measures designed to detect and correct the gradual degradation that had affected traditional STC-based production over successive generations. The challenges facing the Adeptus Mechanicus in the closing years of the 41st millennium required solutions that balanced innovation with orthodoxy, progress with stability, and adaptation with tradition. The ancient compact between Mars and Terra had sustained both institutions through 10 millennia of continuous warfare, but the changing nature of the threats facing humanity demanded new approaches that could preserve essential principles while enabling necessary evolution. The machine spirits that inhabited the Imperium's most sophisticated technologies seemed to sense the approaching crisis, their behavior patterns displaying increasing agitation and unpredictability that suggested even they understood that fundamental changes were inevitable. The future of the Cult Mechanicus would depend on their ability to adapt their ancient wisdom to new realities while maintaining the spiritual foundations that had sustained them through the darkest periods of imperial history. The knowledge preserved in their archives and the technologies maintained in their forged temples represented humanity's best hope for survival in a galaxy where ancient enemies awakened and new threats emerged with terrifying regularity. As the 42nd millennium dawned, the tech adepts of Mars faced their greatest challenge, proving that the marriage of flesh and steel, of human wisdom and mechanical precision, remained humanity's path to transcendence in a universe that seemed increasingly determined to drag them back into darkness. The Omnissiah's children stood at the threshold of a new age, their augmented forms silhouetted against the crimson glow of forge fires that had burned for 10,000 years. Behind them lay the accumulated wisdom of ages, the sacred knowledge that had sustained humanity through its darkest hours. Before them stretched an uncertain future where their ancient doctrines would be tested against threats that challenged every assumption about technology, consciousness, and humanity's place in the cosmos. Yet in their binary hymns and ritual observances, In their dedication to the machine god and their service to the Imperium, lay the seeds of adaptation and survival that would carry the Cult Mechanicus forward into whatever trials awaited in the grim darkness of the far future.